All right, well, welcome back, everybody, and this is the continuation of our zoning meeting on March 25th, back from our recess. May 25th, right, thank you. I wanted to go back in time, I guess. Just as we get started this afternoon, just a couple things. I want to, first, if you have not submitted a comment card and you want to make a public comment on this item, please do so now, because otherwise we are not going to continue to take comment cards throughout the afternoon. That's number one. Number two, about decorum in this room this afternoon. As you saw, many of you were here earlier. This is a business meeting, and so we expect people to behave as such. So, and I'm saying this out of abundance of caution because I'm sure everybody will be on their best behavior, but just please, there's going to be no clapping, yelling, whistling, just anything that may slow down this proceeding. We'd like to get, we'd want to hear from everybody who's here that wants to speak on this item, but we want to make sure we do it as efficiently as possible. So I will give you one warning, and after that, we have deputies stationed around the room. I would hate to have to ask them to do so, but if needed, I will ask them to have you escorted out of the room. So want to get that out of the way. And then I think the last thing is there anybody here who filled out a comment card who was not sworn in earlier this morning? Okay, let's take care of that right now.
Third time's a charm, right? All those who didn't previously get sworn in, please rise and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, County Attorney. All right, with that, I'm going to turn, Commissioner Bernard has a question, and then we will go to staff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple questions I want to make sure that we get from the attorney. I know that we're about to hear items 7A, B, and C, and I know that we've heard B and C already before us. The first is, I guess my question is in regards to item A, the special magistrate's recommendation. What I want to know from the county attorney or staff is, the folks who were here, were they given the opportunity to present something to the special magistrate if they've had that opportunity to do that?
Yes, they have been. There is a process within the Fluidra statute for public participation, and 5 members of the public were able to do so.
Okay, so 5 members of the public did participate.
That is correct.
So, Mr. Mayor, if the members had the opportunity to participate through the special magistrate process, and we do have comment cards, what I would like to do is, if we can limit the conversation in regards to the special magistrate's report, and to limit instead of 3 minutes, if we can do 2 minutes or something like that, so in that way it's specifically to the special magistrate, since we've heard the item and the residents had the opportunity to go in front of the special magistrate.
Okay. I have no problem limiting. I think we have over 30 some odd cards, so the 2 minutes would be appropriate. I looked to legal counsel as to.
I would recommend that you allow them to speak on matters that they feel are relevant to the items before you today. And that's not only the recommendation, but the applications as well. We want to make sure that we're following our ordinary proper procedure in this matter.
Okay. Are you okay with that, Commissioner? Okay. And everybody in chambers, we're going to follow legal counsel, but we will be 2 minutes per person. Okay. Next, I want to turn this over to staff, and I believe we start from Darren. I think you have comments to make on this.
Right now, I just have some brief comments. Again, to follow the ordinary procedure, applicant will present first, then I have a presentation, a brief one, which will probably be somewhat duplicative of what they present, and then we'll go into the public comment. But again, we're back again on this item that you heard on January 26th. And that since then, we have had a Fluager hearing on April 19th, lasted over 4 hours. It was before a special magistrate, and the special magistrate issued a recommendation. The recommendation is that the board accepts the applications, and we have also been served with a notice of a Burt J. Harris claim in excess of $81 million. And so that is something to keep in mind throughout the presentation, and I will explain more about that in my portion of the presentation. So at this point, I hand it over to the applicant.
Okay, all right. The applicant is here. Floor is yours, sir.
I wanted to see if we can get we have a short PowerPoint pulled up. That looks like it. Thank you so much. Seth Bain with Lewis, Longman, and Walker here on behalf of the owners of the Palm Beach International Industrial MUPD property. I'm joined today by co-counsel Mariana Chaplot and Shane Granum of Quinn Emanuel. I'm going to go over a few opening comments, and then there's a few elements from the magistrate's hearing that Mariana would like to go over with you as well. This is an unusual item before you today, right? This Fluager process, this opportunity to go before the magistrate and have him review all the information that has gone forward. We were fortunate that the county was able to secure the services of Judge Bram Cantor. Bram Cantor is a retired administrative law judge out of Tallahassee, where he served for over a dozen years. When he, at the end of his term there, he was managing all of the environmental and land use cases for the administrative courts out of Tallahassee. So he's really one of the preeminent experts on competent substantial evidence, on comprehensive plan compliance, on environmental permitting. So it was a real pleasure to have him, be available to come down here to to West Palm, hear from us. And he had the opportunity to hear everything that we had transpired in January, our applications. They got to hear from the county staff, and as your staff just indicated, they had an opportunity to hear from the public, and there was no time limit on the members of the public that asked to participate in that event. Judge Cantor gave them the full amount of time that they wanted. And the headline of that order, as you've all seen, could not be more clear or concise. The judge found that when he had reviewed all of the information, and he had the advantage of not even having to make a ruling right away, he took it all back with him and spent 2 weeks studying it, studying the law, studying all the comments that were made. And his final conclusion was clear, was that this application met every one of your requirements, is consistent with the actions of the county in the past, and to deny that it did create an inordinate burden on the project. And so he, without reservation, recommends approval of it. That's consistent with the findings that your staff has made all along. However, we've also haven't been sitting on our hands during that time. We went out to your business community. We've met with 5 different chambers, and we've asked them to look at the project we had before them and to see if there was an opportunity to garner their support. And to a chamber, they all came back unequivocally and said, this is the right project, the right place, and will be an important element for our community, and they recognize that. North Chamber said it creates a productive asset for our community. The Chamber of the Palm Beaches found that the project's environmentally sound, economically beneficial to the county, vital to our continued growth. The Central Chamber and Hispanic Chamber noted that business owners' rights to engage in a permitted use of their property is a paramount property right in our country, that right to use your property consistent with the laws that are before it. And the Boca Chamber recommended approval of the magistrate's order. As you discussed at some length at your workshop just a few days ago, Industrial lands in the county are critical. They're critical to the future, and they're under increasing pressure. They're under increasing pressure for redevelopment. It's housing for other uses, and yet that use remains critical and vital to the growth of our county. And so when you have a project like this that is zoned industrial, that is land use industrial, that's within your industrial protection zone, it's the right project in the right place. It's clear from the magistrate's order. We look forward to bringing this valuable project to the county, to the jobs that it will create, to the increase in your tax values, and to the benefit of everyone that here. So with that said, I'm going to ask Mariana to come up, as she has a few items she'd like to go over with you. It's just the right button now.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners. Mariana Chaplot on behalf of the applicants, and we just have 3 takeaways from the special magistrate's hearing and report that we wanted to highlight for you. The first one, like Seth said, is the judge considered the staff report. He heard from expert testimony, he heard from the county, and he heard public comments, and he ultimately found that the owners have shown changed circumstances, which he identified as substantial population growth combined with continuous growth in online shopping that have greatly increased the need for warehousing in the county. As you are all aware, broader economic and population changes in the county are consistent with trends across South Florida, which have resulted in an increased need for warehousing. In addition, the special magistrate noted that this particular piece of property is ideally situated, were his words, for warehouse use, given its location on the Beeline Highway and given the neighborhood uses surrounding the property. Therefore, not only have general economic and population trends changed since the raceway was first opened in 1964, but additionally, this particular property has been targeted by those trends, which make it, given its size and its location, ideally situated for warehouse use. The next takeaway from Judge Cantor was his understanding of the public comments made both at the January board hearing and then at his hearing. He heard from members of the public whom he described as people who enjoy attending raceway events, raced vehicles at the raceway, and or had a business that directly or indirectly benefited from racetrack operations. They were well-spoken and presented relevant information. These people also spoke at the board meeting in January. There were 2 main topics that the comments addressed. The first one was the rise of illegal street racing. At the hearing, public comments, there were public comments that illegal street racing will take place regardless if there is a racetrack, and this observation was supported by recent statements made by the county sheriff, who also explained that illegal street racing was already a problem when the raceway was open and not a result of our closing down the raceway on our property. The second topic of public comments came from racetrack fans who want us to reopen the raceway because they want to attend local racing events and they believe the raceway could be profitable. Judge Cantor heard the comments and acknowledged that although public comment is important and we need to hear it, it's not necessarily competent evidence. And specifically, he found that the racetrack fans do not have special financial expertise or experience in operating a racetrack. Nor do these comments about the profitability of the racetrack affect the finding of changed circumstances. He said that the fact that there has been a substantial increase in the need for warehousing and the racetrack property has become well suited for that use was not affected by the question of whether the racetrack could have been profitable or would be profitable under different circumstances. At the end of the day, the property in question here is private property owned by private property owners. It's not a public recreational facility and it's not on public land. Therefore, the special magistrate said that he is confident there is no support in the law for the proposition that a landowner can be forced by a city or county to continue to operate a business that the landowner no longer wants to operate. And then the last takeaway that comes from that is that a denial of these applications would unfairly burden the property owner's use of the property. We want to be free to do what we have the right to do with our own property. The industrial use is permitted by right and is consistent with neighborhood uses. We want to develop the property in a way that supports the community's changing needs and brings additional financial benefits to the county through tax money and other infrastructure improvements. Thank you for your time today. We have all of our experts here. What's that?
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we have all of our experts here, and we would like to reserve time after public comments. We are happy to answer your questions, or they can answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. Is that the end of your presentation?
Yeah, what you said, our staff is here. We didn't think it was necessary to present the full details of the site again. You've all seen it several times, but we have our experts here to address any questions that might come up.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from the board at this time? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Okay, so we'll turn to staff, and then we'll go into disclosures.
Okay, I believe I have some slides. Wouldn't mind. You can back up. Oh, you passed.
Thank you.
There we go. All right. All right, thank you. So, as you know, this is the site, and I'd briefly like to go over the timeline since January 26th. So, on January 26th, the BCC denied Moroso's application for a development order amendment and a development order abandonment. On February 24th, Moroso filed a request for relief under 70.51 Florida statutes, otherwise known as the Florida Land Use and Environmental Dispute Resolution Act, which we call FLUADRA. On April 18th, Moroso sent the county its notice of Burt J. Harris Act claim, claiming the county has inordinately burdened their property in the amount of $81,380,000, which was backed up by a certified appraisal done by a licensed appraiser. On April 19th, we held the FLUADRA hearing. It was over 4 hours long. It was here at the county. It was held before Special Magistrate Bram Cantor. As Seth explained, Judge Cantor is a longtime administrative law judge with vast experience in environmental and land use law, and he's qualified under the FLUADRA statute to serve as the special magistrate in this matter. Both sides presented sworn testimony, and 5 members of the public were able to participate, and they were also heard. On May 2nd, the special magistrate issued his 9-page written recommendation, and in it he recommends, and I quote, "The board approve the owner's application that were denied on January 26, 2023, subject to the conditions for approval recommended by the county staff." In addition, he also stated, and I quote, "that being forced to continue an unprofitable racetrack use the owners do not want to continue, and being denied their request to make another use of the property that is permitted by right, unfairly burdens their use of the property. For this reason, and because the board's actions was inconsistent with the county's previous interpretation and application of the ULDC, the board's action was also unreasonable." Now I'd like to go into a brief summary of the special magistrate's recommendation. With respect to the traffic and safety issue, the special magistrate noted that both the county and Moroso's traffic engineers testified before him that the county's traffic performance standards were satisfied by the application. He also noted that there is no safety factor related to street racing in the ULDC or standards dealing with speculative off-site criminal activity like street racing that the board can factor into a decision to abandon a use. With respect to the abandonment and the amendment standards, I quote, "The special magistrate is confident there is no support in law for the proposition that a landowner can be forced by a city or county to continue operating a business the landowner no longer wants to operate. It is unlikely the owners asked for the county's permission before the owners closed the raceway in April of 2022. The unspoken proposition in the statements made by members of the public in this matter is that the owners must revive and operate the raceway or get someone else to do it. However, even a new owner cannot be forced to operate the racetrack. Property owners are free to not use their properties." He also noted that the testimony showed that the county has never denied an abandonment and that it approved change circumstances similar to the ones here as recently as November 2022 when it allowed a abandonment of a development order and a change from restaurant and hotel uses to warehousing. He quoted, "The proposed warehouse is an allowable use under the commercial recreation / industrial future land use designation in the comprehensive plan." So the proposed warehouse's uses comply with the comp plan. And then he also noted that the use is also permitted by right under the property zoning district, which is the multiple use plan development district, MUPD. Warehouse is permitted by right in that district. Finally, he noted, public testimony did not refute the fact that there has been a substantial increase in the need for warehousing and the racetrack property has become well-suited for that use, which are reasons the board has previously found sufficient to meet the changed conditions and circumstances. Now I'd like to briefly talk about the Burt J. Harris Act. Under Section 70.001, paren 2, when a specific action of a governmental entity has inordinately burdened an existing use of real property or a vested right to a specific use of real property, the property owner of that real property is entitled to relief. The proposed warehouse uses are permitted within the MUPD zoning district, the zoning district for this property, by right. Since these uses are permitted by right, it falls within the definition of an existing use and a vested right under the Burt Harris Act because the use is reasonably foreseeable and non-speculative. Therefore, denial of the warehouse use, which, again, and I cannot stress this enough, is permitted by right, will be determined by a judge to be inordinately burden their existing invested rights. Denial will put the county taxpayers on the hook for upwards of $81,380,000 of damages, not including attorney's fees, which the Moroso would be entitled to if they prevailed in their Burt Harris action. In addition, under Section 70.001, paren 7, paren B, if the county ends up paying these damages, it will not get title to the property. Instead, it will be the proud owner of the rights to build warehouses somewhere else. In other words, we will get the development rights we have denied to the property owner. So therefore, it is the county's recommendation that we accept the special magistrate's recommendation and approve Moroso's applications with the conditions of approval as they are set forth in your staff report.
Thank you. All right, and we need any additional information from staff at this time? Is there any other presentation you all are
I
making?
do have a question.
No.
Okay.
I do have a question.
Yes,
Just,
Commissioner Bernard.
Just what happens with the Burt Harris lawsuit if the commission supports the special magistrate's recommendation?
They would no longer have a basis for it. It would go away.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So next is going to be disclosures, and we can start with Commissioner Baxter. And this is item number 7.
Thank you, Mayor. I've received emails which have been filed with the clerk, and I've had verbal communication with Seth Bain, Ari Mazzo, and Steve Abrams, and no site visit recently.
Thank you. Commissioner Bernard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've received verbal correspondence from the residents. Met with Robert Diffenderfer, Ari Mazzo, Steve Abrams, and Seth Ben.
Thank you. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. On Portman Industrial MUPD, I've had verbal communications, meetings with Seth Bain, Steve Abrams, and Ari Mazzo, and Madeline Marconi. I've received and filed emails.
Thank you. Commissioner Marino.
Thank you. I've had verbal communications with Seth Ben, Steve Abrams, Ari Mazzo, Madeline Marconi, George Gentile, Robert Diffendorfer, and Craig Homra. And I filed correspondence.
Thank you. Commissioner Woodward.
Thank you, Mayor. I've had verbal communication with Seth Ben, Steve Abrams, and Ari Mazzo, and received and filed email correspondence.
Thank you very much. And Commissioner Barnett.
Thank you. I've had verbal communications with Seth Ben, Steve Abrams, Ari Mazzo, Eric Weinberger, Megan Weinberger, Mark Levy, and have correspondence to receive and file. No site visit. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, on item number 7, Palm Beach Industrial, MUPD, I had verbal communications with Seth Ben, Steve Abrams, Bob Diffenderfer, George Gentile, Craig Hamra, and Madeline Marconi. I received email correspondence and filed that with the clerk's office. All right, so we are done, and we are done with disclosures. We are done with presentations. We'll move to public comment, and you'll have 2 minutes for your comments. Appreciate if you can keep them to the case sets in front of us.
Thank you, Mayor. We have 2 podiums, so please take both. Gary Small, Jennifer Davis, Steve Calamusa, and Eric Obel.
Good morning, Commissioners. If I may, before my time starts, may I ask a procedural question?
Go ahead.
Okay. Is there a protocol or a procedure in place for a time when this board wants to revisit a decision absent what's happening here, Fluidra, and perhaps change their vote or their mind on a previous decision that was made? Is there a procedure in place for doing that?
There is, and I'll give you my interpretation, but then I'll turn it over to the county attorney. In the case where somebody was on the prevailing side of a vote, that commissioner could bring that item back up and ask to have it have another vote by the board. But other than that, I'm not aware of any other mechanism, but I defer to the county attorney to answer that question.
That's correct. That's the mechanism to bring an item back to the board.
Okay.
At the next
All
hearing.
right. All right.
So, okay, I appreciate that.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and we'll ready to take your comment.
Okay, thank you. So I want to
Your name and address for the record,
Sorry,
please.
Jennifer Davis, 16575 75th Place North. A year ago tomorrow, this board voted on an item that was on the consent agenda that was pulled by Commissioner Sachs to redesignate 13 acres of land that surrounded the Palm Beach Industrial Raceway. That vote paved the way for this project to go forward and removed tremendous barriers. I have emailed you all. I have done a massive public records request and uncovered what I will call shenanigans by members of the staff to push that through on the consent agenda. I don't know how many commissioners knew the purpose behind that vote. I doubt I'll ever know. But it was wrong. The public was unaware of what was happening and why it was happening, and therefore were not given the opportunity to weigh in on why that should not have been allowed to pass. In addition, there are experts everywhere here, and all of them are paid for by the people who want this project to go forward. So guess what they're going to say? The public and the racing community has not been given the opportunity to present our experts, our side of the story, our statistics, our data, our information. We have a ton of information that refutes theirs. They have a statement. Increases in population growth mean we need more warehouses. Where's the numbers? I'm a scientist. Where is the data that tells you that supports that? Where is that evidence? In addition, and I have 6 seconds left, Bram Cantor and Louis Longman Walker have been meddling in the affairs of Palm Beach County for far too long, starting with Minto 20 years ago. Thank you, I'm done.
Thank you.
Sir?
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for the time here today. My name is Steve Calamusa, 4114 North Lake Boulevard. I'm a former assistant county attorney. I used to serve this board back in the 90s when Joe Mount was the county attorney. I come to speak to you all today as a person who attended the racetrack in the 80s, 90s, and was a sponsor at the racetrack as well. I'm one of the partners at Gordon & Partners. I've been there for 26 years. We started with about 8 employees when I was there, but now we have 160 employees and 5 offices. I'm just going to voice my personal experience with respect to the track as a sponsor. I sponsored it when Moroso owned the track. I was there when Dave Rupp owned the track as far as attending the track. And what I will tell you is this, is that I saw a profitable track when Moroso was there. I also had a great experience as not only as a racer, but also as a sponsor when Moroso owned the track. And I'm just sharing, this is my opinion regarding my experience, and you can all do what you want with it. But I felt it was my obligation for the landmark that this track is to come here and speak the truth regarding my personal experience. I'm not here as an expert. I'm giving you my opinions. When the track ownership changed, there was a change with respect to the way things were handled with respect to sponsors, because I manage my firm. I manage other businesses that I own, and I know how important it is to treat people properly that are providing business to you. And what I saw was something a little different. As a result, what I saw is I saw racers getting disgruntled, and I also saw people become discouraged with the track. And it wasn't because of the facility, it wasn't because of the location, it was because of the way the facility was managed. So that being said, I come here and I think to myself, like, this is a track that's located in a place where population growth has increased since it was owned by Rupp and owned by Moroso, that the facility actually has gotten better access to, because when I used to go in the early days, I used to have to get off of 95 at PGA. And anyway, the only change in circumstance that I saw is that it got better access to the track, that there's more population to serve it. Thank you.
Sir, name and address for the record.
My name's Eric Obel, 16575 75th Place North, Loxahatchee, Florida. May I yield my time to my wife?
I'm sorry, can you yield your time to your wife?
Yes.
You have 2 minutes. Your next person will have 2 minutes.
So can my wife take my 2 minutes?
Sure. Is that okay, Mayor? Did she, wait a sec, no. She already filled out a card. No, sorry. I'm sorry. That is not how procedure works. If you were, sorry. And I can have the lawyers, weigh in on that.
Okay. Again, my name's Eric Obel, 16575 75th Place North. Jennifer Davis is my wife. Everybody knows who she is. She's so passionate because this is a family affair for us. It always has been. Everybody here is a bunch of families. I believe the judge misunderstood some things that didn't come across to him. We're not asking them to reopen the track. They didn't do a good job managing it. They had buyers. When the buyers fell through for the market value that they wanted, they decided they're going to get you guys to let them change the purpose of this land. We just want, they bought it as a racetrack, they can sell it at a racetrack. They don't want to manage the racetrack, they never did. They told us themselves 10 years ago they started this plan. I believe Seth was on the record up here speaking to that. I moved here to Palm Beach County. This was a very nice place. It's still a nice place, but it's slowly becoming Dade and Broward with these warehouses spaces. You just approved one. We don't need another one. We need the racetrack. We have problems. When I moved to Florida in the 70s, there was motorcycle racing downtown West Palm behind the auditorium. Well, now we have kids running up and down the streets with dirt bikes because there's no place for them to go. We had stock car racing at the fairgrounds. We don't have any of that anymore. This was all great charm that Palm Beach County had. Let Palm Beach County stay Palm Beach County. Don't let it turn into Miami-Dade or Broward counties. We don't need that here. They move up here because we're nicer.
Thank you.
I have Gary Small, Madeline Marconi, Peter Scalzo, Richard Bowers. I think I've called Mr. Small several times, and I'm guessing he's not here. Thank you.
Good morning, Madeline Marconi, 9618 Capendon Avenue. On January 26th, this commission upheld the code and properly denied this application due to its failure to comply with the ULDC. The code explicitly states the applicant must demonstrate changed site conditions or circumstances that necessitate the abandonment or amendment. An allusion to a changing world economy is not a demonstrated change in site conditions or circumstances, period. If this were not the case, we would not be here today, and any owner could virtually cite to the world economy to meet the code. This would set a dangerous precedent with unlimited consequences for Palm Beach County. We're also here due to the magistrate's recommendation, which only appears to pander to the applicant, who has repeatedly proffered a fantasy narrative regarding the economy and its alleged impact on this property, as if it were the very underpinnings supporting the world economy itself. Newsflash, it's not. And this fantasy is a mere attempt to subvert the code, not meet it. However, you don't need to rely on the lay people who brought this issue to light. You have your own attorneys who submitted a proposed order to the magistrate, from which I quote, "The owner's justification did not establish changed site conditions, nor did it establish changed circumstances. Neither of the owner's statements discusses site-specific changed circumstances or conditions that make the requested changes necessary. Instead, the owners focus on unsubstantiated rhetoric about overall economic conditions. This is the recommendation of your attorneys. While the county's recommendation wasn't adopted and the magistrate seemingly sided with that of the law firm, which is former law clerks who are employed with, it is only a recommendation. It is not binding, as per Florida Statute 7051 subsection 21. There is no requirement for the commissioners who denied this application to fold because of a thin-veiled threat of a lawsuit by this applicant seeking a bailout due to the applicant's own poor business sense. This shouldn't be considered, let alone be the driving factor here today. A lawsuit is temporary,
Thank you.
but the consequences of this project will remain in perpetuity.
Thank you.
I ask that you uphold your
Thank you.
request to deny.
Sir?
Peter Scalzo, 8033 Sterling Falls Circle, Sarasota.
Excuse me one
Yes,
second. We'll give you your full 2 minutes. Commissioner Baxter, you're recognized.
I just want clarification. I think we covered this. This isn't the original owner. Isn't this the financial people who took over once they defaulted?
My understanding is, there's a relationship where they initially were the lenders, and then because the track owner defaulted, they took ownership of it.
That's correct. Seth Bain again, Lois Holman Walker for the record. One of those misconceptions that was out there that these owners bought a racetrack and they should have a keeper racetrack. That's not the issue at all. What they did was they lent money to a racetrack in an effort that those racetrack owners would be able to improve it, make it profitable, and make it a viable business. That racetrack owner with that money failed to be able to do so. The business continued to struggle. It failed, and they ended up taking it over basically in recovery as once that property failed. And despite that fact, they took it and continued to operate it and try to make it viable, continue to invest in it themselves, but yeah, did not buy it as a racetrack, lent to racetrack owners that were unable to make it a viable operation, and that's how it came to pass that they ended up with it.
Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you. Okay, yes, sir. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Peter Scalzo, 8033 Sterling Falls Circle, Sarasota, Florida. Just a question for the attorney. Didn't that group also buy other racetracks? Memphis, et cetera?
I'm not answering questions.
Oh, okay. All right. Anyway, what I was going to say, I've owned and operated 5 NHRA, IHRA drag strips. I currently operate the NHRA sanctioned drag strip in Riverhead, Long Island, New York. I live in Sarasota, Florida. If these folks were in any trouble, I would have been happy to come over here and show them how to run a drag strip. Okay, so I never heard from them. The point is this. If it is at all possible, and this might be way out of the box, the Palm Beach County does a great job in providing ball fields, baseball, football, soccer, basketball courts, et cetera, for the public. How about thinking outside the box and saying maybe possibly you could purchase this property and put an RFP out for somebody like me to come in and I will operate it for you. We'll make that thing successful like it was successful in the past. I will operate it as a business and I will keep these local folks that love this sport so happy. And also to refute the other attorney's statement, you've heard from Palm Beach County Sheriff Ray Alonso that said the track does affect the illegal street racing.
I must object. Shane Branham for the owners. Mr. Scalzo cannot testify as to what the sheriff said or did not say.
Okay, hang on.
The applicant will have a chance to rebut anything said during public comment later.
Can I have my...
Hey, okay, wait a minute. We will take care of that. I've asked you earlier, please not to shout out. And we'll make sure, we want to be fair to everybody. Excuse me, I asked you not to shout out, so now that's your warning. You do it again, and you're going to be asked to leave. Okay. I don't know how much time was left. Anybody's
Yeah,
It's about 40 seconds.
what we can do is.
set it.
It was at 40 seconds.
We'll give you the full 2. No, that's fine. We'll give them the
Okay.
full 2 minutes.
That's fine.
I can start over?
Hopefully, if you can wrap up a little sooner, that'd be great.
Probably not, but...
Okay.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. My point is, just to talk about the illegal street racing activity that is going on, I don't think anybody has ever said, I have never said, and again, I've owned 5 racetracks, that the racetrack is the end of the illegal street racing. It is certainly a help. I'm involved with the Beat the Heat organization. My racetrack in Miami, Florida, called County Line Dragway, back in 2006 when I opened it, within 30 days, Miami-Dade County was able to disband their police. They had a task force trying to catch the people racing illegally on the highway because of my racetrack, County Line Dragway. That is a fact. Just 3 days ago in Boynton Beach, there was another call to the police, 12:30 in the morning, what for? Illegal drag racing and drifting on the streets. It's a problem. Will the reopening of the track cure it all? Absolutely not. But it will be a help. And again, the police involvement that I've had at all my racetracks called Beat the Heat, where they get the police officers coming to the track, racing against the kids. You be the police officer at one of my Beat the Heat events, I give you a T-shirt that says I beat the heat. The people love it. The police officers love it. Let this racetrack continue to open. Let these people enjoy what they've enjoyed for generations, wholesome family entertainment that will bring additional income to the county and also will make the streets safer. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sir?
Richard Bowers, Boynton Beach, Florida. I wanted to bring to your attention where the special magistrate spent just a small part of his recommendation, and that's discussing the change of site condition, which was the reason for your denial. The magistrate outright fails to address what has changed on the property and then goes on to discuss other projects that have been granted by the board. He then discusses an unfair burden with no legal justification to support that. There is no unfair burden standard in this. The community has supported the racetrack for decades and will continue to do so. The applicant, however, has not been supportive to the community. They simply see the opportunity to profit off of the property to the detriment of our community and then just head back out of here. They don't live here. We praise We praise you and our elected officials for denying this application in January. We are proud of Commissioner Baxter, Commissioner Sachs, Commissioner Bernard, and Commissioner Woodward for properly denying the application. Based on the evidence before you, and in addition to the traffic and safety concerns of your constituents, some of them here now, a lot of them can't make it because they're working, we'd like to request that you stand by your decision and don't let this out-of-state applicant muddy the waters and the facts on the real issues that forever will cause burden on the residents if you approve this application. The other point I'd like to make is, I mentioned this last time I was here, there's one racetrack in Palm Beach County. One, that's it. So if there was one bowling alley, one golf course, one park, one whatever, I'm sure the commission would say, there's only one left. We're gonna leave that for the community. Let them have that. If this track is gone, there are no other tracks. So please save the track and make the right decision. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Bob Burgess, Tony West, Donald Burgess, Charles Green or Green Charles? Green Charles? Or is it Charles Green?
Mr. Green. Maria, who's first?
Go, pick one. Go right ahead. I called Bob Burgess first.
Okay. My name's Bob Burgess. I live at 19800 Castlewood Drive in Jupiter. I'd like to point out a couple items that I think have been missed. I developed a economic impact survey for the business community that is impacted by the closure of the track. The staff should have multiple emails from the people with that form filled out. To give you an idea, of the 4 forms that I happen to have copies of, they estimate it's going to cost $490,000 a year in revenues as an impact to their business. If the staff analyzes all of the forms that they did get, I'm sure it could be as much as 10 times that. The presentation that this is an economic boom can't be supported until that part of the impact, the negative impact, is analyzed and presented to the board so they can make an informed decision. This track also, supports charity events, family activities, driving instructions, emergency training, beat the heat as mentioned, high performance driving, as well as racing, both drag racing and road racing, which I was involved in. The track also is very unique. The permitting is so unique, it's not anywhere in the county that you could put this kind of a facility. It also lies right across from one of the most, the gold standard in defense contractors in Pratt & Whitney, Sikorsky, and Aero Rocketdyne. The new law just passed by the legislature requires that the funding for this project, should it go forward, needs to be subjected to that law to make sure there is no foreign involvement from certain adversarial companies. And I recommend that you do that before you approve it. Thank you.
Sir.
And we'd like to enter this into the record, please. Can I do that?
Staff would be happy to take your document.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Charles K. Green, 116 Keller Drive, in the beautiful little village of Palm Springs here in West Palm. I'm going to bring a little bit of history to our famous track Moroso, that it should be preserved as historical. Once upon a time, back in 1967, a very great man by the name of Dick Moroso made a promise to certain people of gender and race that this track would be open as long as it was existed, and he kept his word. It was the only place put West Palm Beach on the map that was known as far around the state all the way to the Philippines, where I served, that if you wanted to race there and be fair, this is where you went. You went to Moroso, where the term all over the world, there's no racer here or in the community that has not heard this term or spoke it. Run what you brung and hope that you bought enough. He made it so that people of color, African Americans, precisely had a place to race, so that we were not on the street in illegal racing, which back then, that was our only avenue. Now, I have a daughter, 21 years old, ready to take over my part. And she should be able to race where some of the famous women even race there on this track in our county, right here, our home. I moved from New Jersey, a whole business, to be close to this track. So like kind of my livelihood,
Thank you, sir.
all right?
Appreciate your comments.
Just save the track.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Burgess?
Mr. Mayor, Madam Vice Mayor, Commissioners, good afternoon. Donald Burgess, President and CEO of the Chamber of Commerce of the Palm Beaches. Ours is one of the 5 chambers mentioned earlier that voted to approve or endorse this proposal. Our letter was already submitted, but I want to, emphasize a few points that you keep on the forefront before you make your decision. Money should not always be the motivating factor that drives your decision making. However, the county stands to earn impact fees of $1.7 million if this project goes forward, and annual tax revenues of approximately $4.6 million. The proposed project recognizes the need to limit environmental impact and commits to maintaining a 50-foot buffer on all sides of the property to protect the surrounding wetlands. The property is zoned for industrial use, so no waivers are required. There's a potential to create 1,500 quality jobs. There's no real downside here. The Chamber of Commerce of the Palm Beaches believes that this is a good project and urges the commissioners to vote for its approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir?
Hi, my name is Tony West, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I'm the owner of Florida Track Days. It is a performance motorcycle school where we were partners with Palm Beach International Raceway. Up until the closing of Palm Beach, we were one of the largest customers of the facility. We utilized the road course. Despite years of lack of improvement and investment into the facility, we continued to grow year after year. I can't speak about other businesses such as ours who did business with the racetrack, but we don't feel like we were an outlier in our success at the facility. During our time, our companies and the businesses that relied on us and the track, we brought thousands of visitors into Palm Beach County every year, and that number only increased year after year, right up until the closing of the track. And those customers who come into the county are staying at hotels, they're visiting restaurants, or purchasing fuels. Other tracks that we know we work with, such as Sebring, Daytona, the Concourse Club in Miami, Homestead Miami Speedway, all have something in common that they differ from Palm Beach International Raceway, and that they are busy. They are charging record rates in order to rent their property. Somehow Palm Beach is crying poverty, but yet these other tracks seem to be succeeding. In fact, there is a new track being built in Lakeland, Florida, due to the demand of motorsports here in South Florida. The track, it's a unique entertainment facility. It cannot be reproduced. It will not be reproduced in South Florida, let alone in Palm Beach County. We would like to hopefully keep it as a track. We know distribution centers and warehouses are important, but there's different places to put those. Once the track is gone, it's gone. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I have Cordelia Jackson, William Jackson, Amelia Melmechi, and William Webb. And if I've pronounced your name wrong, I apologize in advance.
Sorry, before you start, Commissioner Barnett, you're recognized.
Thank you. A few minutes ago, the applicant had an objection they wanted to voice. Is that something they can do now, or should they wait till after public comments?
They'll do it. They'll do a rebuttal after all public comment.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Cordelia Jackson. I live in North Miami Beach, Florida. On January 26th, this application was denied due to the lack of changed site conditions or circumstances. Since then, a special magistrate whom has direct ties and a longstanding relationship to a law firm representing the applicants, that said, in part, there was no lack of interest and no economic impediment that qualified as changed circumstances, necessitating its abandonment. However, that is not how the changed circumstances standard has been interpreted and applied in the past by Palm Beach County. The magistrate's position at this stage is irrelevant at each application that goes through the planning and zoning process is completely different from the other. Applications should not be grouped together and shoehorned through based in just one misinterpretation of the code. I also want to remind the commissioners that a self-imposed want is not a demonstrated change site condition or circumstances. The underlying development order is still valid, and we have shown you in many ways that the raceway is still needed in this community. This recommendation from the special magistrate is just that, a recommendation. You do not have to accept his recommendation, other than the economy, which affects every property owner. Not just this single property owner, the applicant continuously fails to state what the change in circumstance is. For that reason, your denial of this application is proper and valid. Your community has spoken and is against the redevelopment. Your county code is against this. Please deny this request. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Baxter, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just trying to do it real quick before they spoke. I wanted to let the clerk know I need to amend my disclosure to add Madeline Marconi. We've had verbal communication. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks for taking care of that.
Sir?
My name's Mark Weinthal. I wasn't called. Linda was called. I have a group of 5 people reading my speech, which was designed for 3 minutes, not 2 minutes. If you would give us a leeway so I could get my 5 people to go up at once, that way the presentation's more fluid.
I'm sorry, Mayor, I'm not quite.
We don't have any presentation approved. There was a request for a video.
Let me rephrase it. My speech is approved, is fluid. That's where I'm going.
So it has to do in the order in which...
It has to do with the order as it's being read. My speech is supposed to have been 15 minutes. You guys are going to cut it down to 8 or 9 minutes, and I'd like to have it read consecutively by the people that are reading it for me.
I'm looking at the county attorney.
I mean, if the people have submitted cards,
Everybody is submitted.
then, and that's going to be their 2 minutes,
They go at the end.
have at it.
Call all the cards.
I mean, otherwise, we have no way to figure out...
We gotta know who these people are ahead of time, so.
Yeah, this should have been arranged ahead of time.
I tried to do that.
Unfortunately, I can't. I'm not going to be able to accommodate that. I'd love to be able to do it, but it's very disruptive for the folks here that are trying to manage these comments. So, if you want, there's no way she's going to find these cards. All right. I'm sorry. They're just going to have to read
I
it.
can give you the list of names, and we'll wait until we come back up.
Yeah, but she's going to be calling them up in the order in which the cards were submitted. And honestly, I don't think it's fair. It's not fair to everybody else who wants to do something. It should have been, sir, it should have been arranged in advance. We have accommodated things like this in the past, but we've done so with advanced knowledge. So when the cards came in, we knew that's what, in fact, was being asked for. The only thing we can do, we'll understand what they're saying, whether or not they can just identify that they're part of whatever you wrote and get it into the record. All right? That's the best I'm going to be able to offer for you today.
Can we wait to the very end then?
I'm calling cards. If they don't want to talk, they don't have to talk.
Well, she's going to call their names, and they're going to come up. All right. Sorry about that.
Okay,
try and
again,
be as fair as we
the order I
can.
have here is William Jackson, Amelia, and I'm not going to butcher your last name, I apologize in advance, William Webb, Ethan Hackle.
Good afternoon. William Jackson, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners. I'm here to speak. Basically, you know, I have a 15-year-old daughter that spoke. You know, she's learning how to drive. Where's a better place to learn how to drive than on a track? You know, I do autocrossing events. I'm a member of a performance driving group that has events almost every week, every other week at Sebring, Homestead. We would love to be going back up to Palm Beach. We go to Homestead every other Friday and participate in the Fast Lane Friday. You know, we go to car shows events. We see the two-stepping, we see the burnouts, but me as a father, me as a role model, I call it out. We stop it. We recommend Street Racing Made Safe, this organization. We recommend all the other outlets. And the fact is, Palm Beach County doesn't have an outlet. You have a problem, but no outlet for it. Like you said, it's not going to solve it, but it'll definitely help it. And what I heard from the other member, that this is in such close relation to a defense contractor, that really needs to be looked at too. We have way too much China influence. If you're talking about Amazon or anything else getting in, you know, or anywhere around that, that really needs to be looked at. You guys need to think out of the box. Like the guy said, buy it. Let's make it profitable. He'll run it for you. You already got a business plan proposed to you right here. Let's just make it happen. You know, we need to get the street racing off the streets. We need to get kids someplace where they can learn to control these vehicles in a controlled environment, instructed environment, and this is perfect for it. We shouldn't have to drive to Bradenton. I shouldn't have to drive up to the firm. I shouldn't have to drive all the way up to Sebring. I do. And I'm in North Miami, by the way. So Homestead's about the same amount of distance from here to there. Anyway, thank you for your time, guys. I hope you do the right thing.
Good afternoon. Amelia Malash, Port St. Lucie, Florida. First, I want to thank the commissioners who properly denied this application back in January. Commissioner Sachs, Commissioner Bernard, Commissioner Baxter, a fellow racer, and Commissioner Woodward. The applicant here today continues to say that the proposed warehouse use is permitted by the right, but the truth is Palm Beach County government requires that this applicant must obtain separate approval to abandon its current use and amend it to a new use, all of which is heard and decided on by our wonderful elected officials. For the magistrate reiterates the statement made at the April hearing, how no one has ever heard of an application for abandonment being denied by the county is completely irrelevant. Each application is unique and based on the location, proximity, and sensitive environmental areas. And most importantly, the direct impact to the residents that the application will have. Even if it is true that an abandonment has never been denied in Palm Beach County, that may be a potential clue that this applicant that their application fails to that degree. This application in particular comes with severe impacts to the surrounding community and even the surrounding sensitive environmental areas that surround the property. You have the decision today to uphold the denial of this application. Doing so is proper, and it is the right thing to do for the county, for its residents, and under the code. I, on a personal level, started at Moroso as a young child and grew fond of cars. The only way to help minimize illegal street racing is to keep the track alive. We have to travel, just like has been stated in the past, or before me, to Sebring, to Homestead, to Daytona, to do these types of events in order to keep this passion going. By keeping it alive, we keep it here. Thank you.
Thank you. I have William Webb, Ethan Hack, Ryan Hack, or Hackle, I can't read the writing, and Braxton Newman.
Good afternoon, all. My name is William Webb, 655 Garden Road, Riviera Beach. I'm reading from a presentation prepared by Mark Weinthal. Here is what the county will lose if the racetrack is allowed to be destroyed. Lives. People will be racing on the street. Property will be damaged. Innocent people will be injured or killed by people street racing. There will be an additional strain on police, fire, EMS services. Sheriff Rick Bradshaw is on record saying that racetrack is a vital part of this community and needs not to be destroyed. Every year, the state legislature introduces numerous bills trying to combat street racing. Since the racetrack is shut down, street racing has dramatically increased. If it fails to reopen, people will be injured, people will be killed. You can prevent this. God forbid this happens to your family. Jobs will be lost. All track employees lost their jobs. Race day vendors have downsized or gone out of business. Local businesses that rely on the racetrack have downsized or gone. Businesses such as your local auto parts store, mechanic race shops, trailer supply stores, restaurants, printing providers, etc. These are all local people, members of the community, local businesses who rely on the racetrack for our livelihood. People have lost their jobs and their homes. Sales tax related to purchases and hotel stays associated with the raceway will be lost. The venue, Palm Beach International Raceway, is an iconic destination in our community. It provides a safe place for families to enjoy, a safe place,
Thank you.
regulated place for people to race.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, name and address for the record.
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon. My name is Braxton Newman. Born and raised in Boynton Beach, Florida. In the recommendation delivered by Special Magistrate Judge Cantor, loosely agreed that there has been substantial increase in the need for warehousing based on the statement by Jose Antonio Laban, CBRE National Partners Vice Chairman. However, Mr. Laban conveniently failed to recognize the CBRE's very own website outlined the following economic outlook, and I quote, "Downstream consequences of the Fed's tightening program are surfacing and signaling slower growth ahead. Significantly, trouble in the banking sector will likely weigh on the strongest feature of the economy, the consumer. As banks limit tending to increase their own liquidity, this will erode demand for big-ticket items such as housing and autos, but could also impede spending on services, which has been a key driver of the job growth in the recent months. Meanwhile, other corners of the labor market, especially technology and corporate functions, are under pressure as hiring far exceeded revenue growth in the recent years. Other operating challenges, such as inflation and cost of capital, are causing firms to shelve expansion plans, and business investment is stalling. Like households, firms will certainly feel the pinch of constrained credit flows. Mr. Laban failed to recognize his own company's economic outlook for the impending slowdown that is ahead. This statement, very alone sourced directly from the CBRE, negates the applicant's justification for the change of use. There's no need for warehouses, and even if there was, this is not a demonstrated change in the sight of conditions and circumstances. And to go away from that fact as well, my father's told me many stories about how him, my grandfather, everybody has gone to this track. And I would just like to keep it around for my kids. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for the opportunity to speak.
You're welcome. Chev Mahara, Linda Latak, Colleen Marconi.
Yeah, both of us were called.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you would be up to the podium. Come on.
Sorry, I was waiting. I want to request that he get the full 3 minutes. He's been working really, really hard on this. This is his first experience in local government, so I think he deserves to be able to at least properly read his speech. And do you have anything for him to stand on?
We don't, I don't think so, but we do have a handheld microphone. We have a handheld microphone. Would you be willing to move one of your 2 minutes to him?
He's going to give all of his time.
It's your dad.
I'd rather not.
Really? Your own?
What I have to say is important as well. Again, this is his first opportunity.
I can't.
To have experience in local government.
I need somebody to give him a minute.
Sorry?
I need somebody to give him a minute. I can't.
We've been practicing. It takes him 2 minutes, 20 seconds. I was 25 seconds shorter. Yeah.
All right, we'll take your 45 seconds.
You could speak to them from here. Everyone hears this, right? You could speak to
We'll
them
let
from
him
right
go
here,
over.
okay? So they could see you?
We can see you.
Ethan Hackle, Martin County. I love racing.
Since I was born, my dad and I have been going to the races almost every week. It has been the best times in my life. I've been able to meet a lot of cool race car drivers like Larry Larson and David and the Grubworm Camaro, but everything has changed. We used to ride go-karts and play putt-putt golf every week off Kinder Highway. That's now been sold off and will be a shopping center. We used to off-road right off Becker Highway any time of day. That's all been torn down for houses. We had a special fishing spot, and that's gone now too. And now for the last year, the racetrack we love so much has been abandoned by the owners so they could make money. My dad often tells me stories about great times he had before I was born and the way things were before even he was born. I'm 7 years old, and in my short time here, I've already seen so much change. I'm just worried by the time I have kids, there won't be anything left. Commissioners, please fight for the generations of the people who aren't here yet. We need outdoor activities for our children to have a good life, not warehouses. Please fight with us. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Hack. Go ahead, we can clap for him. Mr. Ethan Hack, I want to thank you for coming out today and sharing your valuable opinion with this board. It's a great lesson in civics, so thank you for being here with us.
My name is Ryan Hackle, Martin County. I was born and raised in Jupiter. I've been here my whole life. I've been going to the racetrack since I was 5 years old, and I'll never forget that first time. I've read a bit about the proposal, and I challenge the suggestion that the site would increase tax revenue by more than $4 million and bring 1,500 jobs to the area. They are warehouses, correct? There is no proof that a warehouse will generate that much in tax revenue unless it is a projection over a number of years. And there is no feasible way that the 1,500 jobs would exist, even if you count the number of contractors and construction workers to build it. These numbers seem disingenuous. So the fiscal arguments using numbers that are questionable and truly undefined are debatable at best. While property owners have rights, just because they ask for something, it doesn't mean the county has to say yes. Seth has reiterated multiple times that there was a chance to buy the racetrack in an original bid and that the bids to keep it were too low. The problem with this is that it was done behind closed doors without the attention of the general public and more specifically the people who support the racetrack. They keep reiterating that we are forcing them to keep it as a racetrack, which there's nothing further from the truth. All we want is an opportunity to sit down like adults and work something out that helps the both of us, that makes it work for the both of us. Myself and several others have contacted Seth's office, IRG, and 6th Street on numerous occasions in order to do whatever we can to save our racetrack, and they have refused to return even one phone call. At the last meeting that you guys were not here for, that you were not in attendance for, IRG's representative proved that they not only had no idea how to properly operate a racetrack, you should have been here, but they in fact did not invest in order to bring in more business. Sadly, it is a complete fabrication in order to cover up their total disregard for a business model that they chose to take over. Another thing, and I don't pretend to know all the facts, but a local man and his wife just purchased South Georgia Motorsports Park. Instead of the money going here to potentially get our track, to go to this county, to this state, it's gone to Georgia.
Thank you, sir.
Stand and fight with us. Teach your kids to fight while there's still something left to fight for.
Miss
Latouche, Linda Latouche at 6555 Garden Road, Riviera Beach. I know it's been stated before that these owners have taken it over and they want to make money. We understand. And we also understand that the historical fact of the racers in Palm Beach have spent a lot of money at these stores and brought a lot of people to your restaurants and your hotels. Look at Miami Grand Prix. That one race alone brought over $350 million to South Florida, to local hotels, restaurants, and local businesses. Since COVID-19, a lot of our businesses, especially vendors that did make money at the racetrack, they've lost their businesses but could come back if they had the opportunity. Yes, we could also have a school there, a school that would teach our boys growing up about racing, and they would know how to use their brains and their hands. They both are well educated and professional. This is a family that we know of here, has 2 children that grew up in racing, and they both got well educated. They can figure out how to build and fix just about anything. The youngest son has applied for a patent on a device to go on a microscope to take a picture, and has developed to take a picture to help develop prosthetics for amputees. He is now a college professor. If Morosis wouldn't have lost the business and it was well maintained and kept being maintained, this business would grow. He will tell you that working on cars taught him how to figure things out and work with his hands. If we lose this racetrack, we cannot rebuild here. There is not going to be an opportunity for another racetrack.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, I have Shev Maharaj, Colleen Marconi, Drew Martin, Jordan Mara, Steve. You live on 45th Street. I believe so. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Colleen Marconi. My address is 1100 Duncan Circle, PGA Palm Beach Gardens. I have been a taxpayer homesteaded resident in Palm Beach County for 28 years. We moved my family up here from Broward County, probably because the racetrack was up here after they shut down Hollywood. I have been taking my children to the racetrack since they were in strollers until they got old enough to go with their dad. And on the weekends, I knew where my husband was and I knew where my kids were. And that was a nice feeling. Dear Palm Beach County Commissioners, I respectfully request that you uphold your decision to properly deny the application that went before you on January 29th to redevelop Palm Beach International Raceway. This track is a piece of Palm Beach County history, and it is necessary for your community. Without a racetrack for both young and old seekers to go to, there will be an increase in illegal street racing on public roadways. Palm Beach County Sheriff Rick Bradshaw publicly voiced his concerns about the increase in drag racing, motorcycle racing, and reckless driving on our neighborhood streets and highways, which could lead to senseless fatalities. Racetracks are not only important for keeping street racing at a sanctioned facility, which is how the inception of the NHR National Hot Rod Association began, but it is also a family-oriented sport that teaches young children about healthy competition and the proper way to both win and lose against competitors. The sport of drag racing is unique because it brings race fans from all over the country and even all over the world together to share the love for the sport, but also to exercise mechanical, mental, and physical skills to race these high horsepower vehicles on a track. As a professional driver in the NHR, I urge you to understand the value that this racetrack brings to your community and properly uphold the denial of this application. This track race is greatly needed, and this comes from Ron Capps, three-time national NHR world champion. Thank you.
Shev Mahara, Drew Martin, Jordan Mara.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me here. I am Jordan Mara. I'm a Palm Beach Gardens resident. I moved to Palm Beach in 2010 to run the road course for Palm Beach International Raceway under the original Moroso Investment Partner Group that purchased it. During that time period that I was here running the road course, we saw 10 to 20% annual growth a year for 7 years straight. There was very little, if any, reinvestment into the facility. During that time period, the original MIP group was focusing on purchasing other tracks to wrap them up into a large bulk, which was then refinanced with TPG. As they stated, that group defaulted on the loan. My understanding is everybody in TPG that was involved in that deal was let go because all of my correspondents that I talked with during that period were no longer there. I left shortly thereafter, seeing that all they were trying to do was turn this into a warehouse rather than any focus on operating a racetrack as they had purchased. This request is based on a lack of feasibility to operate and saying that it is an unprofitable track. We have not seen any financials to that effect. I do know during my time period there, it was profitable. It continued to be more profitable every year. Changed circumstances that they have mentioned is the population growth, which, as Calamusa and a couple other people have mentioned, would only help a racetrack. Additionally, going on to the request to build warehouses, a nice case study is if you look at Homestead International Speedway down in Miami, they actually sold off about a fourth of their parking lot to Amazon to build a warehouse. It was completed 2 years ago. There's not a single box in that warehouse, and there's not a single truck moving back and forth because there is no need for that warehouse. As of right now, my understanding is a year ago, Portman is no longer interested in purchasing this property, so they are developing it on their own. If there's not a letter of intent for somebody else to come in and use that warehouse, my question is, who is supposedly going to be using this warehouse? We have a lot of motorsports all around this state. You have, I'm out of time. So is it standard that you remove time from 3 minutes to 2 minutes? I just thought that was somewhat odd.
We normally don't answer questions, but I'll entertain that. Yes, it is.
Okay. All right. Thank you for your time.
Drew Martin, I'm here on behalf of the Lux Ettrick of the Sierra Club for St. Lucie, Martin, and Palm Beach County. It seems to me that if this decision were to be made strictly on economics, that you would turn down this application for warehouses because this racetrack has really promoted a lot of small businesses. And so, you can see all kinds of business people who take their time off from work today to come down here and tell you that this is an important venue for them to make money. So I think if you were going to just do this strictly on economic reasons, you would turn down this application. Now, if you were going to do it on environmental reasons, we would turn it down because when they're not operating racetrack, this area is very viable to a number of species and birds and animals that use it. It also provides water recharge to your aquifer, and at the same time, it can take flood water. So if you're going to make this decision strictly on the environmental, you would turn down this application. Now, if you were going to talk about stress to your infrastructure and your roads, you would turn down this application because we know that these warehouses create a lot of trucking. However, we also are hearing, the gentleman just spoke, that there's not that much demand. So in other words, the reality is you very well may be ending a viable use of something to change the circumstances to something that may not be used. So you may just be creating vacant property. So that's a question of how will that benefit the economy? And whenever somebody says they're going to create 1,500 jobs, I really think that someone should hold them to that, and they ought to have to put up a bond. And at the end of that process, they have not created 1,500 jobs, then they should forfeit the bond. That would prevent people from getting up here and making these sort of false promises. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Steve? And you can repeat your last name again?
Cocaro.
Cocaro.
I'd like to have Sonny Myron read his first, because ours was a two-part. We had to break it up for 2 minutes, and we got to add sequence. Is it okay?
Go right ahead.
I'm sorry?
Myron Schulte of Lake Worth, Florida. I'm reading a letter from Ken Martin from SLC Commercial. This letter was entered into the record in the form of emails to each and every commissioner. I have copies for them as well. Dear Palm Beach County Commissioners, Colliers is one of the best sources for reliable data regarding commercial real estate across the country. The report I have attached is specific to the Palm Beach.
Wait. Start his time again.
Would you please reset my time?
We're taking care of that.
Is this interruption in violation of rules of order?
I need to, go ahead.
Goes to what's about to be said. This is one of many people who's bringing in what should be evidence, financial statistics, from people who aren't here, who can't be cross-examined. Any of these people could have presented that at the earlier hearing.
All right, thank you. Let me go to our attorney.
Yeah, this is the same issue that happened earlier with the storage, the State Road 7, sorry. The applicant will have a chance to rebut and object to anything at the end of the public comment, so you can raise your objections then.
Just make sure he gets a copy, of the letter.
Yes.
I have provided copies, and they are been emailed
You'll
to
get a
every
copy.
commissioner.
We'll get a copy.
Right, I'm not sure if you, it's the same issue as before.
It'll be explained.
Yeah.
Go ahead, sorry about that.
Thank you. Current statistics regarding industrial sector in Palm Beach County. Ken Martin, SLC Commercial. Dear Palm Beach County Commissioners, Colliers is one of the best sources for reliable data regarding commercial real estate across the country. The report I have attached is specific to the Palm Beach County industrial market, and although it appears the industrial market is slowing down, the stats can be interpreted to suggest the market has already turned down, i.e. the party is over and these new projects will only pull down values for the entire industrial sector in Palm Beach County. Following are some bullet points I find worthy of noting. First, understand the attached report is from Q1 of 2023. On page 1, the report shows an annual timeline going back to Q1 of 2022, so you have a verifiable set of data as to the activity over the past year. On page 1, under keys takeaways, they show an increasing vacancy rate, which means that too much new product has already been dumped into the market. Based on the market only absorbing 74,000 square feet in Q1 of 2023, it will take 8 years to absorb the new product, which is currently under construction, 2.4 million square feet. Also on page 1, you will see the historical comparison for the past year, and the net absorption is very alarming given only 74,000 square feet has been absorbed, whereas 519,000 square feet was absorbed in Q1 of 2022. Q4 of 2022 was in negative territory for absorption, with Q1 of 2022 absorbing 519,000 square feet and the year ending at negative 144,900 square feet. This indicates the absorption declined by 374,000 square feet in 2022, which represents a 72% decline in absorption. Based upon the bullet point above and the current absorption in Q1 2023, the lost absorption from just last year alone will take approximately 5 years to get back to positive absorption. Yet the developers are currently developing another 2,421,300 square feet. Thank you.
Okay.
Steve, you're next.
Thank you. In finishing the letter, the last bullet point is the absorption of space in general does not increase significantly in 2023. The industrial market will take over 10 years to absorb what already is in the pipeline, and based on the 2008 recession timeline, this is typically for a market cycle from boom to bust and back to boom. Statistics contained in this attached report illustrate the fact that too much product is already existing, and the new product in 2023 and beyond will only make the situation worse. In closing, I can say a typical broker will always exaggerate the viability of a developer's project, regardless if the developer's project will lease up or not. By example, I have been known to tell developers not to build their project, but just to approve it for development, but only for developing at a future date. In 2008-2011 recession, I was telling developers not to build, and they did anyway, and I actually sold their properties for the banks, ultimately foreclosed on them, developer, and made money by being honest and developing. My credentials are solid, and most of the activity brokers in Palm Beach know me. My credentials include being a CCIM certified commercial investment member. For the past 15 years, I've been an active industry real estate broker. For the 20 years, I focus on Treasure Coast area. In addition, I was appointed to Planning and Zoning Board for the City of Port St. Lucie for 8 years and served as chairman for my last 2. My opinions above are based on 20 years of experience in the Southeast Florida industry market. And, all right. And that is signed Ken Martin, CCIM, SLC Commercial. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I have Joe Rayner, Clemente Travieso, Mark Weinthal, Aaron Horwin.
We have
He's gonna go
Joe,
first.
Mark, and Clemente. You called it in a different order. I'm going to go first. Joe's going to go second.
fine.
Clemente's going to go third.
That's fine.
So it's semi-worked out. My name is Mark Weinthal. I own and operate Marie Speeding Custom, 3111 45th Street, West Palm Beach, Florida. I first want to thank the board for denying the application on January 26th and showing our voices do matter. The community has shown you time and time again that we are against this. I don't know a single person or business other than the Chamber of Commerce, which is always supported by big business, not little business, that is for this project of not destroying a historic landmark in Palm Beach County. I've read the special magistrate's recommendation. I want to emphasize only recommendation. Our elected representatives do not have to accept his recommendation, and this community urges you not to accept his recommendations. The special magistrate who was chosen by the attorney and has a long relationship with the applicant's attorney's law firm failed to state the change in circumstances. I find it very interesting that we have to go to Tallahassee to find an impartial judge. The Section 7A 4 of the Palm Beach County Unified Land Code lists the requirements and standards for which the application must meet to request the land granted. If a development order, amendment order, or abandonment fails to meet any of these standards, it shall be deemed adverse to the public's interest and shall not be approved. I've taken this language directly from your code. One of the mandatory standards in this application must demonstrate change in site conditions and circumstances, providing the application's judgment statements that it necessitates the abandonment and necessitates the amendment. If the application fails to meet this criteria, the application shall not be approved. Nothing has changed, which is why the board denied the request back in January. The special magistrate wrongly accused you, the board, of this arbitrarily denying an abandonment without the explanation. This is what there is to explain. The track has been in operation since 1965. It has not changed. There is no change.
Hello, Joseph Rayner, 5440 Wallace Road, West Palm Beach, Florida. The property owners wanting to sell the land so it may be redeveloped is not a changed site condition or circumstance. A self-imposed want is not a demonstrated change site condition or circumstance. I want to emphasize this. A self-imposed want is not a demonstrated change site condition or circumstance. The applicant wanting to destroy Palm Beach County historic landmark and have thousands of people lose their livelihood so they can build warehouses and hire minimum wage workers is not a change site condition. The underlying development order is still valid. There is still a need for the raceway. The site conditions and circumstances have not changed. As per your code, if a development order abandonment request fails to meet any of the standards, it shall be deemed adverse to the public interest and shall not be approved. There is no special conditions or circumstances provided by the applicant to justify this change. As such, you must deny this request. And I want to say that I think we all have more in common than not. If we're lucky, we all grow old. And if you look around this crowd, you'll notice that there's a lot of diversity. But I want you to pay special attention to the older faces here. They're important to consider because, like those who choose to work over the retirement age, or like many of our parents, they know that inactivity, unfortunately, leads to withering away. Vice Mayor, you spoke about a playground for children. But what about a playground for our parents, the elderly? That's what this racetrack is. We know how removing this hobby will affect the elderly, but what happens when the younger people are affected by loss of this track? They rebel. They spill into the streets because there was no remedy and no outlet for their otherwise illegal activity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, good afternoon. Clemente Travieso, Lake Worth, Florida. Continuing on Mark's speech, the magistrate spends a small part of his time recommendations discussing the change of site conditions, which was the reason for denial, and fails to address what has changed. The magistrate wrongly goes on to discuss previous projects being granted before this board. The magistrate fails to cite which applications or applications he mentions and how they are similar because those comments by the magistrate have no bearing in this matter. Each application is to be decided upon the merits and facts specific to the individual application. The magistrate further goes on to discuss an unfair burden which has no legal justification. There is no unfair burden standard. Even if there was, you can see the community stands behind the racetrack. The racetrack is profitable and the community supports the track. The applicant sees an opportunity to make a quick buck. We are the community and we support the track. I'm a small business owner and recently had to close my doors because I could no longer continue. The weekends at the racetrack were my opportunity. I'm a father, stay-at-home mother with 2 homeschooled children. I myself grew up with, it's called Arnold Chiari malformation. I wasn't allowed to play sports, baseball, football, what have you. I couldn't take impacts, but the one place that I could go to get away was to go drive. It was my place of freedom. It was the place where I loved taking my kids to show them a different aspect of life. I hope that you guys can consider fighting for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have Aaron Harween, Warren Sharp, Laura South, Joe Costello, Ken Zaron, Mark Anthony Gibson, Caitlin Hewitt, Peggy Gossett-Seidman, and last call for Shev Mahara.
Hello. My name's Aaron Horween. I live at 3856 Van Cott Circle, West Palm Beach, Florida. And I oppose the Palm Beach industrial application. I'm a local business owner here in Palm Beach County, relatively new father. Me and my family have been going to the track since the early 90s. I've been going since I was his age. My parents couldn't be here. My younger brother couldn't be here today, but I'm representing all of them. And it's meant a lot to me, to them. I'm probably speaking for hundreds of thousands of other families that I know as a second generation, motorsports enthusiasts to go out there, whether it's drag racing, motorcycles, go-karts, road course, mud trucks, whatever events they held out there, people from all over came to enjoy the facility. And, like you said, the circumstances haven't really changed out there. And when you're comparing it to a children's playground or warehouses, it's pretty much the same thing. It's a racetrack, or do you want warehouses? I mean, people from, when it gets cold all winter, people come down from every state that I know, come on down, and they race here and pump this into this Palm Beach County. When Discovery Channel hosts their races here, there's 30,000 spectators that come from all different states. They go to the hotels on PGA, Jupiter, West Palm. They go to the restaurants. I know all these people. It's a real thing. And bringing in automated warehouses, it just doesn't make any sense to me. There's plenty of room for development for other things. My great-grandmother's not struggling for food or drinks. My 8-month-old's not struggling for food or drinks. What more do we need to bring in? What more do we need? We're not out in the middle of the sticks where we're reliant on this stuff. So just make the right decision and uphold your decision of denying
Thank you.
this application, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. And your baby's very well behaved.
Thank you.
Sir, name and record.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioner, staff. My name is Mark Anthony Gibson, 2594 Acklands Road, West Palm Beach. I'm here to voice my opposition of item number 7 here on today's agenda. The Raceway has had a long and rich history in our community. It was one of the only outlets here in Palm Beach County where car and driving enthusiasts came together to enjoy the passion in a safe and responsible manner. I myself am a 911 dispatcher for the state of Florida, and we do receive an abundance of calls of illegal, street racing and traffic takeovers in roadways such as Southern Boulevard, US 441, I-95, the Turnpike, and so on and so forth. And I do believe keeping the racetrack open and keeping it going will help alleviate, the burden of this illegal partaking of street racing and traffic takeovers on the community and to law enforcement. It will help alleviate that burden. And that's all I have to say. I ask that you consider the rejection of this proposal. Thank you for your time, and thank you for everybody coming out in opposition to this. Everybody have a great day.
Thank you. Miss?
My name is Laura South. I live at 7078 Southeast Sleepy Hollow. I worked for Moroso Motorsports Park for 20 years. And when I left in 2007, we operated in the black for many years. We had just won the Providencia Award for our contribution to tourism in Palm Beach County. We had over 500 events a year annually, and we had contributed and created more than $600,000 in economic impact. Before the economic crunch in 2007, Moroso was to have been part of a new clean and green research development project. Unfortunately, that did not go through because in that time it was a terrible economic crunch. That was 2008. Now those R&D projects are continuing at full speed with corporate backing, but not in Palm Beach County. Many have spoken about the value of racing. We know about the family, we know about the economics, there's a lot of things, but what's been downplayed a lot and what people may not realize is the potential for the huge business development with R&D in Palm Beach County. Forget about the racing for a moment. The track is a perfect venue for high-performance vehicles. This isn't just a theory, this is a fact. Many of the motorsports teams have changed their entire business plan because 80% of their business is now R&D. Their income now comes from research and development platforms. Among some of the corporations, and I'm not going to detail what they do in the interest of time, but these corporations are General Electric, NASA, Boeing, University of Central Florida, Siemens, Florida Tech, FIT, Florida Atlantic, Northrop Grumman, Pratt, the Department of Defense, Department of Transportation, not to mention all the manufacturers that are testing hybrids, autonomous vehicles, and hydrogens. Most of these programs can be activated now. These people are actually spending their money now, and they're ready to come to Palm Beach County and be involved with the right facility and the right environment. We have industrial parks. We have warehouses. We can't build another multi-use facility like was out at Moroso Motorsports Park. That's why we need to continue to research and create programs and facilities like this for our future. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir?
Hello, Joe Costello, 8200 Northwest 24th Court, Pembroke Pines, Florida. Media person, got my start at Palm Beach, here to read a letter from NHRA President Glenn Cromwell into the record, and I would also like to submit it. I believe it has been submitted digitally. We are here to offer our support for the preservation of Palm Beach International Raceway in Jupiter, Florida. The NHRA is the premier and largest sanctioning body of drag racing in the United States. Since our founding in 1951, we have been committed to helping take racing off the streets into the controlled environments of racetracks. As the sport founded more than 70 years ago on that foundation, we are offering our strongest possible recommendation to keep this facility in your community. NHRA founder Wally Parks worked with civic and law enforcement authorities to combat street racing, and the sport has continued to grow to what it is today. NHRA is now the largest motorsport membership organization in the United States, with 35,000 licensed professional drag racers, 80,000 members, and more than 40,000 hobby racers. Many drag strips like PBIR are small businesses that rely on the fundamental tradition of hot rodding to stay in business. Without these facilities, there is no outlet for people to race in a controlled environment, and municipalities are exposed to the dangers of illegal street racing. Illegal street racing puts many people, participants, spectators, and the unknowing public at great risk. It would be tragic for the community, for the sport, and the thousands of racers and future racers in the area to see this facility go away. PBIR is a business worth keeping because of the positive impact it can have on the community and for future generations and the jobs it can create. Again, we urge you to take the necessary steps to save Palm Beach International Raceway and keep it as a vibrant and thriving part of your community. Thank you, NHRA President Glenn Cromwell. And on a personal note, with my last 10 seconds, they said that they have other options for the warehouses, but there is only one option for the racetrack. So we hope that you can save the track. Thank you.
Thank you. Our last four cards, Warren Sharp, Ken Zeron, Caitlin Hewitt, and Peggy Gossett-Seidman.
Good afternoon, Caitlin Hewitt, 12568 63rd Lane North. The public purpose of the county's ULDC is to protect human, environmental, social, and economic resources and maintain through orderly development the community character and stability of present and future land use and development in Palm Beach County. That public purpose is served by not reversing your decision to deny this application. This statement was made by your very own attorney, and it could not be more from the truth. Your attorney also went on to write this: "This sense of community that grew around the racetrack is an invaluable asset." But most importantly, the applicant's justification did not establish site-specific change circumstances or conditions that make the requested changes necessary. Instead, they focused on the overall economic conditions, which we all can agree is on the downturn. Your denial of the development order abandonment and development order amendment was reasonable given the standards from the ULDC that you are required to apply when making your decision. Your interpretation of the code is proper. Your application of the code and denial of the application was also proper. I respectfully request that you uphold your decision to properly deny this application. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And, sir, name and address for the record, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Ken Zarin. I'm from Boca Raton, Florida. On January 26, Commissioners Socks, Bernard, Woodward, and Baxter properly denied this application due to its failure to meet the code by failing to demonstrate changed site conditions or circumstances that necessitate the abandonment or amendment. The reason it failed to meet this standard is simple. Nothing has changed at the property. The said need for warehouse space on the verge of a now declining economy has absolutely nothing to do with this property. But that is the best the applicant has. If something had changed, the application would not have been deemed to be adverse to the public interest and would have been approved. Following the proper denial, the applicant continued to crusade for a county bailout by seeking relief through the Fludera process, during which your county attorney submitted an order recommending the county to uphold its denial of this application due to the failure to meet the code. Despite the proper denial and supporting recommendation by county attorneys, the magistrate sided with the law firm, of which his former law clerks are now employed, and issued a recommendation that injected the applicant's own rhetoric and stated that this warehouse project is permitted by right. That is false. This project is not permitted by right. But for the development order, the applicant could build a warehouse on this property, and we would not be going through this process. Beyond the cloud of recommendation fueled by this applicant and his connections, it is only a recommendation. It is not binding. Florida Statute 70.51 subsections 21A through C are clear on this. The county can either accept, modify, or reject the recommendation. There is no requirement that the county must accept the recommendation. The threat of subjecting the county and its residents to a lawsuit should not be considered when you have had the undeniable and unwavering support of your residents from the outset. The code is clear. The law is clear. This application does not meet the code. This recommendation is non-binding under the statute. I respectfully request this commission reject the recommendation and uphold its denial of this application.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Warren or Peggy? Last call. Thank you. And we also have 25 cards that did not want to speak, but they are in opposition.
All right. First off, I just want to thank you all the people that have come out today. Thank you very much. And I appreciate your decorum in chambers here this afternoon. Very much appreciated. So, all right. I think we go to the applicant now for rebuttal. Commissioner Bernard, you're recognized. You'll wait for the rebuttal. Okay. And then we've got lights lit up. Okay.
Thank you, John O'Sullivan, for the applicant. I just had the one point from the objection, and all I think we wanted to point out is that the letter that they took turns reading from somebody who's not here to cross-examine, that's the same letter that counsel told us is not substantial competent evidence. Obviously, people are allowed to say what they want today, and that's important, but in terms of a decision, that is not substantial competent evidence. The person who wrote it is not here. We don't know if they really have the expertise, and I don't know that that's really the spirit of public comment, is to read somebody who's not here, but from a record perspective and an evidence perspective, that's not evidence. So that's the only point we wanted to make. Subject to that, our objection's fine.
Okay, very good. All right, we'll start with Commissioner Bernard, then Baxter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, I'm sorry. It'll go Bernard, then Marino. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In regards to this item, I'd like to make a motion to accept staff's recommendation and adopt resolution for item 7A, B, and C. And as part of this motion, I am not relying on the letter that was read as competent substantial evidence. And that's my motion, Mr. Mayor.
I will second.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Bernard, a second by Commissioner Marino. Commissioner Marino, you're recognized.
I just want, for the record, Darren, would you please reiterate what the Burt Harris Act could possibly have that would affect us as to the fact that there would be an $82 million payout, yet the county would not have control of the property? Could you please clarify that for me?
Sure, I'll read it directly from the statute. An award of payment or of compensation pursuant to this section shall operate to grant and vest in any government entity by whom compensation is paid the right, title, and interest in rights of use for which the compensation has been paid, which rights may become transferable development rights to be held, sold, or otherwise disposed of by the governmental entity. When there is an award of compensation, the court shall determine the form and the recipient of the right, title, and interest, as well as the terms of their acquisition.
So we pay the penalty, we don't own the property.
That's correct.
So the property owner could then just keep it as nothing.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I'm with Mac. I seconded the motion. I am in favor of staff's recommendations.
Thank you. Commissioner Baxter, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. So when I looked at this, there were several things I took into consideration. But first and foremost, our private property rights and the ability to do what you want with your own property is pretty important. And when a magistrate tells us that they haven't provided to magistrate with that opportunity, something that would fall under the competent substantial evidence, we really don't have a choice unless we're going to be very not wise stewards of taxpayer dollars. And $81 million would be very unwise in my personal opinion. And lastly, we have laws for a reason, and there was obviously a need for the Burt Harris Act, and I think this is exactly one of the reasons it was created. And so with that, I will say I'm also in agreement with my fellow commissioners. But respectfully, Mayor, sorry, if you don't mind, after we vote, I would like to make a comment before we move on to the next item, if you don't mind. Thank you.
All right. Vice Mayor Sachs, you're recognized.
I'd like to support what the mayor said about all of you coming out. This is why we sit here, to listen to you and to hear what you have to say, because we represent you. We don't represent developers, and you know how much I love warehouses. But I love racing, and I can tell those of you who enjoy this wonderful, and I think, I see it as a family sport. I grew up in a garage, really, with engines, and I think that we all have to understand one thing, that when we drive, that sometimes there are stop signs, and sometimes there are yield signs. This is not a stop sign. This is just a yield sign. We don't need this land to build another racetrack if that's what the public wants. I think that there are enough people in this county that want to continue the wonderful family sport of hanging around a racetrack, the smell of the engines, the gasoline, and all the fun and competitiveness. And I'm talking as a girl. I raced like a girl, my dad would say. I knew what he meant. And I still do in my own way. I'm not going to tell you where I do it, I get in trouble. But it's not a stop sign, folks. Keep your faith, in the government, keep your faith in your county government. And we'll talk. It's just a yield sign. So we'll bring this up again, and I'll see you at the next track. Okay? Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Commissioner Woodward, and then Commissioner Marino.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, everyone who came here. At the previous meeting, I will say public comment is what swayed my vote. I had had meetings leading up to that and was fully convinced that allowing this to move forward was the right thing to do. And the outpouring of public passion about this, it did sway my vote. Part of what I wanted last time, I actually asked for a postponement because so much information had come to me in the last public meeting that I needed more information and I needed time to kind of digest and process what had been said. And so when the postponement was not an allowable decision for me to make, I voted to deny. I could not approve at that point. And I would like to add, the judge took 2 weeks to come to his determination. We had, I believe, a 10-minute recess for us to kind of get our act together. I've had more meetings. I've had lots of discussions since then. And I have looked for any way to try to see if we have an option to do this. And like the Vice Mayor is saying, this particular property, I have to vote to allow this to happen. I can't risk an $80 million to $100 million lawsuit that comes to us and we actually get nothing out of it. I had trouble sleeping after that first night. I cannot imagine what this would do to me. But I did ask staff because one of my questions was, this is the only place for a racetrack in Palm Beach County. Why isn't this enough? And they said, well, it's not the only place it could be allowed. Correct. Right now, it's the only place that is allowed, but that doesn't mean we don't have other acreage out there. Patrick Rudder, right here, that was my question. It's like, we have other options, and we do. We have to find an owner to get it. We have to have land, but I would definitely support and encourage everyone who's here. There definitely is a business for it, I believe, and I would like to support and have staff help find another location and have a racetrack, but I cannot vote to do this today, and I'm sorry.
Thank you, Commissioner Marino, then Commissioner Baxter.
Thank you. I too want to thank everyone that came out today, stayed to hear this discussion. This is in my district, as you all know, and I have raced on this track. I have done the BMW driving school on this track. I've been on the drag strip also, and there was an organization that tried to buy this, and I'm not going to go into the specifics of what happened with their offer because that, for me, it would be hearsay. Suffice it to say, they were not the top bidder, and as you heard, there is an $82 million appraisal on this property. So I can't in good conscience, and you heard me say this before, but I cannot in good conscience put an $82 million price tag on our taxpayers here in Palm Beach County when we just had to go out and float a $200 million bond for housing. I did make some suggestions to the gentlemen that were trying to purchase the track and put them in contact with other people in the county on places that they could possibly purchase land to do that. Their comments back to me were, we don't want to go there. So if you all want racing in the county, I'm sure all of us would help in finding a venue for that. But, excuse me? But, you know, the county right now has over 110 parks. None of them have racing. Hopefully in the future we'll have a 200-acre ATV park. We are going to have a future pump track here. We have bike tracks. We have boating. I mean, I can give you a list of over 110 things that we have in the county. The problem is property, and the problem is how big a piece of land do you need for a racetrack? And the county doesn't have that property in our portfolio. If we did, technically, probably we'd be putting housing on it. But if in the future there is an opportunity, the county will be here to help you. But at this point in time, having an $82 million price tag on our shoulders is not something I'm willing to do for our taxpayers. So thank you for being here today. We do appreciate you all taking the time. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Baxter, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor, and fellow commissioners. I think I may have a solution, but I'd like to wait until after the vote to present it. So I'd ask everyone in the room to stay and listen, if you wouldn't mind.
All right. All right, I don't see any other lights lit. Any further discussion on this item? Not seeing any. Madam Clerk, can you take a roll call vote, please? And this is a motion to approve. A, B, and C.
A, B, and C. Commissioner Bernard.
Yes.
Commissioner Marino.
Yes.
Commissioner Woodward.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Yes. Commissioner Barnett.
Yes.
Commissioner Baxter.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Sacks. Yes. Mayor Weiss.
Yes.
That's 7-0.
7-0. Thank you. All right. Commissioner Baxter, you're recognized.
Thank you. So, prior to the recent, as was mentioned, ATV Park, there was another site off of south of Southern. That was actually, it is county-owned property. It's roughly 128 acres that I would like, without objection from the board, to direct staff to start taking a look at and possibly putting out an RFP and see if somebody would be interested in doing a private-public partnership with us, the county, to turn it into a racetrack instead.
I would look to County Administrator, Assistant County Administrator Rudder.
And I think, and if my recollection I think we directed something else at one point too for that property, an ATV park or something.
That's correct, Mayor. There's RFP, I think it's gone through 2 rounds of that property there. If it's a board direction to look at the Southern Boulevard property for an alternate use, certainly we need to go back and look at any restrictions there are on the property, et cetera, but if that's the board direction, can explore that option and report back to the board on opportunities.
And if we could just do that before October, I'd greatly appreciate it. I think, is that enough time for you? 5 months?
Understand the point,
Bring
yes.
it back to us, the information.
I think
Complete it.
having an initial assessment of possibilities, yes.
Thank you.
I just want to make sure that we're understanding we're on the same page, which is they'll bring it back with the possibilities of doing that. An RFP would still have to be let.
Yes, yes.
Understand. Okay, very good. I just want to make sure we're clear. Thank you. Okay, we are finished with this item. We are moving on. I thank you all for being here. If you could please, what? You guys need a break? Okay, why don't we take a 10-minute break? We are in recess for 10 minutes. We are on item number 8.
Yes. Item number 8 is our public notice and postponements modification to the Unified Land Development Code. This particular application is for first reading and final adoption. Again, this is just basically modifying our requirements for certified mail to be first-class mail with an ability to do tracking on it, revising our newspaper advertisement requirements to be consistent with Florida statutes, modifying other types of notices, and requiring the applicant to request a postponement earlier than when we're actually publishing the packet. So with that said, we would like adoption of that particular modification to the code.
Okay. Vice Mayor, you recognize.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I think we discussed this before, and I apologize, I didn't hear the beginning of your presentation. But Wendy, I'd like to postpone, if we could, that part of this issue that reviews public notices not being published in the newspaper and/or those that will not be sent by certified mail. I think we need time to find a vendor who will take care of the issue of sending U.S. mail by certified mail. And the reason I say this is because so many of our constituents, so many of our residents don't have access to the internet. And they read the newspapers. And to not put our public notices in the newspaper is a detriment to the idea of public notice. And I'm very much an advocate of the more that we can give the public notice of what their government does, the better we are. And the indication is of today. So we're such a big and diverse county. I'm sure there are some folks in this county that don't have access to the internet or quick internet or 24-hour internet. So therefore, I wonder if we could postpone that section that relates to not having public notices in the newspapers, and/or not giving certified mail advance notice to people before land is being affected in an area. If I could, Ms. Amara, if we could discuss this a little bit.
We could postpone the whole item till next month, and we can take out the change newspaper to the generic public notice term, if you like. And I anticipate it'll be quite some time before we can go to the web base anyway, so it doesn't matter if we delayed a month and we remove that. As far as the certified mail, we did find that our vendor can do tracking, so the add delete at the beginning, we added to first class mail the delivery tracking as part of this.
That would be fine, if I may have this conversation, Mayor. I think that would be fine in terms of the vendor. And again, I just stressed, and I thank you for taking the time on this. I think it's so important. You know, it's interesting, President Obama said he wanted to end his administration with the fact that every American would have access to the internet like they can at Starbucks. And unfortunately, we haven't done that yet in the state of Florida, and certainly not in this county. So I like to review a little bit more what we can do to keep that open to publication in our major newspapers for information on what their county government is doing, especially with their land. And thank you.
Commissioner Baxter, you're recognized.
Just for clarification, if we remove the requirement of putting it in the newspaper, does it limit us from being able to do it?
Well, right now, that part of the code requires that we publish in the newspaper, and it refers to the statute. What we were doing is reflecting that there was a new statute that lets us put it on the internet or the newspaper. So we were changing the term newspaper to public notice. But we
like I said, I think it'll be quite some time before the county can conquer the art of posting online, because apparently the county not only has to post all of the county notices online, they have to post all the city notices online. So I think it's acceptable that, we could postpone, take that part out, ensure that we have the development tracking in there, like the add delete, and come back next month. That would be fine with staff. But we would have to move the whole item, not a part of it, to next month.
So we would be then, I guess, fitting the statute that changed more clearly by this. I don't mind waiting a month, so let me be clear on that. I just want to make sure what we're waiting for is warranted. So what we're asking then, that is, we can do either.
The way we had proposed it, by just replacing the word public notice replacing newspaper with public notice, it let the county administration and the board to decide when to move to online advertisements without having to do another ordinance. If we don't, if we keep newspaper in, then we'll have to do one of these amendments before we can implement that part of the statute.
I think technology is great, and I think people like newspapers as well, but just having it not be specific to newspapers, I would be in favor of, because the more people that know, I want as many people as possible to know about our meeting. And I think if it's expanding it beyond just a newspaper, that's amazing, because we do have a lot of people who also don't read a newspaper. So just keeping that in mind, I would be open to the more flexibility.
All right, Administrator, you are recognized, and then we'll go to Commissioner Marino.
Just to take Lisa's comments a step further, the statutory change, staff has been looking at that for a number of months now. There are a number of points that need to be worked through before we can come back to the board and express what it is, because it wouldn't just deal with zoning, planning, land use, potential advertisements, it's everything, and there's municipal, a lot of pieces involved, number of agencies. We've been shaking that out, looking to be back to you in the next few months-ish. We're going to be early fall probably before we're back. My understanding, the best way to describe these changes, it kind of sets a table for it and creates the opportunity when that time comes along. But we know what we need to do to be able to express to you the points and for this board to make decisions on responding to the statute and possibly utilizing that option that's provided by it on the publicly accessible website.
Okay, so.
Commissioner Marino, you're recognized.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. So by doing this notice, we're actually widening the reach of people, because we're adding, it's not just the newspaper. Is that what I should be taking away from this?
It's allowing us to do either or, depending on the decision of the board, or both, because our vision was to do both for a while.
Instead of postponing, I think if we said to you, we want to do both, that would make everybody on this commission happy, because it expands our reach as much as possible. Would that, Vice Mayor Sachs, does that work for you? Because it sounded like you just didn't want to lose newspapers.
Can we keep, thank you, Mayor, appreciate it, sorry.
Go ahead. No.
Can we continue to publish in the newspapers and add the internet?
Yes, absolutely. Actually, if you adopt the wording today that we've proposed, we can continue with newspapers until such time that this board directs zonings to stop doing in the newspaper. And we can do that as well, and that'll do both. That way, if we get the opportunity to go on the internet, we'll go on the internet, and we'll keep doing the newspaper until we have a conversation at the board. Sure.
Thank you. Thank you so much, both of you. I think that the whole purpose is to, as Commissioner Baxter said, get it out as much as we can to everybody. Some people don't read newspapers, like my kids, and some of us only read newspapers, like my husband. So I think if we just get it out as much as possible, I think that the purpose of government is satisfied, and I would appreciate that.
So,
thank you for that.
So are you okay, Commissioner, if we do not postpone this?
No, I don't think we need to postpone it.
Thank you.
I think that the staff has done an appropriate job in that either or, so that we always keep newspaper publication.
Okay, I see
Thank you.
our county attorney would like to be recognized, and then Commissioner Baxter.
Just one thing, staff had presented an add delete earlier today on page E2 to add the ability to confirm delivery. And I believe there's also another change on page E6 to change the word USPS first class mail and just make it all lowercase. First, take out the word USPS.
Yes.
Okay. Just wanted to get that on the record.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Baxter, you recognize.
I was just going to make the motion to approve item number 8 with the amendments just mentioned.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Baxter and a second by the Commissioner Marino. My only comment is, I would be delighted to have it published in the newspaper if I could get the newspaper delivered to my house, but that has happened. That stopped a long time ago. Unfortunately, local newspaper and delivery seem to not want to come into my neighborhood. So I think the idea of having it on the internet is a great idea. I still get it digitally, but, unfortunately, I couldn't get the hard copy.
Mayor, when my dad, who is 90 and will be 91 this summer, finishes reading the newspaper,
Do not do
I will be happy to bring it over to you.
I have converted. I converted to my iPad. All right. With that, seeing no other further comments, no other lights, and we have a motion and a second. Motion by Commissioner Baxter, a second by Commissioner Marino. And with the amended proposal, all in favor, all opposed, that motion carries 6-0, noting that Commissioner Bernard has left the dais. All right, we are on item number 9.
Yes, item number 9 is our residential zoning follow-up, ULDC amendment. We had modification on our add delete just as it relates to the title, because it isn't permission to advertise. This is actually first reading and final adoption. Again, we presented this last month. There were some errors and cleanup that we needed to put back in the code and some errors that we needed to remove as they were obsolete. So staff is recommending approval. LDRAB and LDRC found that it met the comprehensive plan, and we're recommending to adopt an ordinance.
All right, Commissioner Baxter, you recognize.
Just going to make the motion to approve to adopt an ordinance approving item number 9.
We have a motion by Commissioner Baxter, a second by the Vice Mayor. Is there any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, all in favor, all opposed, that motion carries 6-0 with Commissioner Bernard not on the dais. All right, moving on, item number 10.
Okay, item number 10 is also had a small add delete on the title of the application request. So this is first reading because this is a use modification. It requires 2 hearings. So we have this as the first hearing, and next month would be for final adoption. And we had one change on the add delete as it relates to striking out language relative to restrictive covenants. So we are looking for first reading approval and advertisement for final adoption next month on this proposed amendment.
All right, Commissioner Marino, you recognize.
Thank you, Mayor. I am happy to make the motion for this because I know that there are a lot of communities out there that are looking for employee housing, and once we get the ball rolling, we're going to be able to put more housing units in the ground, which means these housing units that will accommodate the clubs that want to do this, when we're talking about employee housing, will actually free up other units that they are now renting. So this is a great addition to our ULDC, and so with that, I make the motion to approve.
We have a motion by Commissioner Marino. We have a second by the Vice Mayor, and then Commissioner Baxter, you recognize.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask Commissioner Marino if you would mind amending slightly to also, because it falls under employee housing, the ordinance to modify the ULDC to establish a new type of accessory living quarters for the farmers who want to potentially have that and redo buildings off-site. It's another type of employee housing that could help. And so when I had discussed this with staff, they said we would need to, I guess, bring it up.
That would be, if we'd like to initiate an item on that, that would be up to the discussion of the board. But we wouldn't be able to add it as part of this one. We would have to have the initiation for a new item.
Then I'll wait. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, all in favor, all opposed, That motion carries 6-0 with Commissioner Bernard off the dais. All right, moving on. We have item number, I think we're at 12? Oh, 11, sorry, I went too many. Okay, item number 11.
So item number 11 is a privately initiated amendment where Urban Design is here to request that you direct staff to initiate an amendment to the Unified Land Development Code as it relates to commercial pods of planned unit developments. This proposed change would allow for the increase of the commercial pod from 1% to 5%, as well as modifying some location criteria for the commercial pod. So this is just giving us permission to initiate. We all have to come back, go back to LDRAB, LDRC with language. There is language in that the applicant has proposed, but we still have to work through that with our different agencies as we roll through that. And we can turn it over to the applicant if you'd like to do a presentation.
Does anybody need a presentation on this item?
do.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, we do.
Oh, okay. Well, can I get one?
Good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioners. Tyler Woolsey with Urban Design Studio on behalf of the applicant. Here to talk to you today about the initiation request for a privately initiated amendment to the comprehensive plan relative to the commercial pod within a PUD. Be very brief, I know it's been a long day. What we're looking to do, there's two components to our proposed modifications. One is to increase the allowable percentage of a commercial pod from what is currently a maximum of 1% to a maximum of 5% of the total land area of a PUD. The second change is to modify the location requirements in order to allow that commercial pod to be located on the periphery of a PUD, where currently the setback regulations force it internal to the site. So what you see here is that change in the table, 1 to 5%. And part of the justification for this and the background, our methodology here, we reviewed other portions of the county's comp plan and ULDC and found a few other instances where commercial pods within planned developments are, in some instances, such as the Western Community Residential Future Land Use, required 2% commercial pod. In other instances, you see that in a PIPD, for instance, they're allowed up to 20% of a PIPD, which is an industrial plan development, to allow 20% residential, 20% commercial uses. So other plan development districts regulations within the code currently today contemplate a higher level of commercial than that 1% that's limited in the PUD. You see more of that back up here relative to the minimum requirement for 2% in the Western Community Residential. The location modifications that we're requesting are specifically to modify the verbiage from frontage to access, as the regulations described there do relate more to access than actual frontage. And then more specifically, we're requesting to strike the setback regulations for the commercial pod itself, not the internal setback regulations for a PUD. All other setback regulations, landscape buffers, and so forth will continue to apply. The way that the code currently reads, it forces a commercial pod within a PUD to be 1,000 feet internal to the site. One of the sites relative to what we're speaking on today has 2,000 feet thereabouts of width, and so it would completely preclude the ability to include a commercial pod because there's no way to get 1,000 feet in on a 2,000 foot wide site. So those are the specifics of the request, and happy to answer any questions you might have.
Commissioner Marino, you recognize.
I don't see a problem initiating this, but I need a lot more information. And I think that goes for the next one too. But, you know, this is sort of, I understand what you want to do. You want to be able to build a bigger piece, bigger parcel, or I'm sorry, a bigger building. And the idea that if you're going to go to this bigger building, you have to be off a major thoroughfare and not confined within the PUD itself. But other than that, I really do want a little bit more information on this. So I'm happy to transmit at this time. Initiate at this time, but initiation doesn't mean that we're approving it.
Understood.
All right. Thank you. Commissioner Baxter, you recognize.
I just want to thank the applicant. This was an attempt to fulfill something I had asked for. So the development off of Southern Boulevard has a lot of space, quite a few. And right off of Southern seemed like a better place because we have a lack of commercial space, I would say, out west. And so this would allow more small businesses to exist and more things. And I was unaware of that. We even required the commercial site within a PUD to be in the center, essentially, of the PUD, which seemed silly to me. I thought it would make more sense off of a main thoroughfare. So I just wanted to make you aware this was a request that I had asked for because trying to create space for small businesses and just to help the western communities.
All right, Vice Mayor, you recognize.
Thank you, Mayor. I think that's laudable, what you want to do. My concern, and I think I share that with my colleague, Commissioner Marino, is that I would not like to see too many large buildings that are fronting us closer to a thoroughfare than 1,000 feet. So I think when you're working on this, let's see if we can't limit it so that we don't have unintended consequences later in the future. So you know how to narrow it so that we will approach that which is necessary for certain areas, but certainly not a rule that would apply to all areas in the county. So I'm sure you'll keep an eye on it and narrow it down, and I'll certainly agree to initiate it. No, to move it, to initiate it today, and then we'll narrow it down later. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Marino, you recognize.
Is there, and this is a question to staff, is there any kind of size requirement to this in the PUD? Like,
The requirement right now is just 1% maximum, but, you know, thinking about the specific applicant in this property, they're proposing a very large new plan development, and I'm thinking while we're having this conversation is we might want a minimum acreage as well, and we might also want to not allow it to come back in after the initial approval of a PUD kind of thing. So we might want to look at some kind of different rules, because can you imagine living in a planned development and somebody comes in with a vacant lot along a major road and suddenly it's a gas station? So yeah, there's a lot that we can discuss and look at rules for this one.
and the reason I asked the question, and to me the question is not about the size of the building, but the acreage of the PUD. Because oftentimes you're going to do a MUPD, like an Avenir, and you're going to put the commercial interior, because in that instance you're trying to capture traffic from keep it going, to keep it going out. So you're trying to capture traffic, so you kind of put the commercial in the middle. And, if you have a smaller PUD that really isn't trying to capture traffic, I don't see a problem putting that on a major thoroughfare, because you're helping the people outside of the PUD. So that was why I asked the question about acreage, because I like seeing capturing traffic and not putting traffic on the major thoroughfare. So thank you. And I do, again, I'm happy to initiate.
Okay, thank you. And then Commissioner Woodward.
Thank you, Mayor. Although I think you covered what I was going to ask, because the size of the PUD is kind of, if it's a smaller PUD, like you said, having it fronting makes sense, because otherwise you have outsiders. In order to make the commercial property profitable, they need to be driving into the neighborhood to get to it, and I'm not sure that's what a smaller PUD would actually want. So, I mean, that's, I guess, part of the process is to work out this acreage, maybe the size of the PUD, and also if it's a very large PUD, I mean, 5% of a very large acreage could be a strip mall almost, or, so, yeah, just thoughts to consider. We're talking about it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, I don't see any other lights lit. We have, we have a motion by Commissioner.
I'll initiate. I make the motion to initiate, or are we at number 11, I believe? I'm sorry, it's been a long day.
I think, did we have a motion and second already? No. Okay, so we're going to take a motion from Commissioner Baxter to initiate. We have a second by Commissioner Marino. And this will give you guys time to go back and look at it and bring us back. You've heard comments initially, but I'm sure you're going to hear a lot more as you're working your way through this. So with that, no further discussion on this matter. All in favor? All opposed? That motion carries 6-0. Commissioner Bernard off the dais. Okay, moving on. Now we're at item number 12.
Yes, our last item on our agenda is also a privately initiated amendment with the representative of Urban Design, and their request is to add a use to the code called a rural event venue. And I will turn it over to the applicant. They want to do a micro presentation.
Micro presentation. Good afternoon. Ken Toom with Urban Design. Thank you for having me here today. I will do a very short presentation. The intent of this application is to allow for the rural event venue to be an added to be an added use classification. So we're requesting to add a use within the ULDC. More specifically, this project, which I'll walk you through the PowerPoint in a second, is to allow for Mr. Ford, who owns the Botanical Gardens in the Ag Reserve, to allow him to have a way to fund his operation, which is open to the public. This Botanical Garden, which is this beautiful location in the Ag Reserve on 158th, is open to the public and allowing people to come to the site. But his request is to allow for an event venue to have a few events there to allow for a couple things. So first thing, the more specific, the piece of property is located here, and I learned my lesson last time, here, a 10-acre parcel of land on 158th Street. This is Atlantic Avenue. Here's a turnpike. As you know, there's apartments approved here now, development approved here, development was recently approved here, and up here was the project you were speaking about this morning. The request that Mr. Ford has is to allow the code to be amended to allow for his botanical garden to have his botanical garden, to allow for his botanical garden and a sculpture garden. And this is a little bit more blow up on the subject site. So the request is this privately initiated amendment to the land development regulations to allow for the rural event venue. More specifically, the event is to establish the rural event venue. It requires this venue to be related to support of agriculture, preservation of environmental resources, protection of specific ecological resources. It's also very specifically limited to the agricultural tier, so it's only allowed in the Ag Reserve. There are limitations on the use of what's being proposed. Those limitations on use are specifically in the Ag Reserve tier. It requires a Class A conditional use, which means it comes back in front of this board. Any use or request for this type of use comes back in front of this board as a Class A conditional use. It is a minimum land area of 10 acres. It also, it must be related to agriculture, preservation, or similar protection of ecological and environmental resources. Yeah. The building size on this screen says that our request was for 20,000 square feet. The Land Development Advisory Board and our client is very acceptable to have it at 10,000 square feet, which is what the Land Development Advisory Board recommended. The minimum setback from surrounding residential uses will be 100 feet. And then also there will be restrictions on noise hours and amplified music from 10 p.m. to 9 a.m. And again, our client is very flexible on those hours, but that was our initial request. I know we have to work through that through this presentation and through the process that's being proposed. However, we are very flexible. Mr. Ford is very flexible on timing. He's very flexible on the amount of events per month, and I know those details will get worked out as we move through the process. So that is the land LDRAB approved this project on an 8-3 vote, and they did suggest additional limitation on hours, which of course we would continue to work with staff to come up with what those hours are. I said I would keep it short today, and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. All right, Vice Mayor Sachs, and then Commissioner Marino.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to initiate 12, this rural event venue, PIA initiation. And the reasons I do.
Is that a
would
motion?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Just want to make clear.
Okay, I'll be good.
Second.
Is to, the reason that I'm doing this is this. We heard today from a number of legacy farmers that it's difficult to farm in today's world with the issues of pest control and immigration and such. This area, and I've been to it a number of times, it's in my district. This area is amazing. It has every species of palm in the world designated in this venue. And so what he wants to do is to open this beautiful, it's a huge garden, and it has little schoolhouses there and playground for children, is he wants to open it to the public. And he wants to have venues there so that he can continue to have a commercially viable agricultural area. If it goes through, this is limited to the agricultural reserve, number one, and it can only occur in those venues for support of agriculture and the preservation of environmental resources. In other words, if you've got a land and you're not doing well with growing food, you can turn it into something that is educational for children or for the public. And I think it's a good way for us to continue agriculture and environmental protection in the Ag Reserve. Upon initiation, of course, there's going to be approval, there's going to be maximum square footage requirements, hours of operation, and parking requirements. By the way, this area, this venue we're talking about, is located on Half Mile Road. And it is pretty isolated out there already. So it would not affect, it's not in the middle of an urban area. Okay. It's not in the middle of an urban area, it's in very much of an agricultural area. And I think it would be so conducive to continuing agriculture and the preservation of our environment in the Ag Reserve, and also open it up for education for our children and for people to just be able to have a beautiful event there one day. So that's the reason that I moved to initiate this at this time.
Thank you. Commissioner Marino, you recognize.
Thank you. If this is supporting bona fide ag, that's one thing. I do not want to see something like this become a commercial venue. This is not commercial property. This is not a major thoroughfare. I mean, I could see if this was on a major thoroughfare. There are so many questions I have about this. The hours, the proximity, the 100 feet, 20,000 square feet, 10 acres. I mean, there's so many things about this that I don't like. I understand the purpose of it, but I don't want to see this happening as something now that becomes someone takes their residential property and now it becomes commercial and they're not zone commercial. So while I know that there's going to be a flavor on the board to initiate this, I have a lot of hesitancies about this, and I hope the private initiation of this hears what I'm saying, and if it comes back to us as this reads right now, I'm not in favor of it. There needs to be some work done, a lot of work done, and I think we need to remember that if this is supporting bona fide ag, that's one thing. Rural venues, just because somebody has 10 pretty acres and they want to put a venue on it, doesn't work for me. This is not commercial land. So that is my caveat. Thank you.
Commissioner Baxter, then Commissioner Woodward.
Thank you, Mayor. I think we heard several farmers earlier today make the statement they're struggling. And so whether it's a small nursery or a bigger farm, I think they're not all existing on major thoroughfares. I do not want to see, some random commercial venue in random places. But if they're trying to highlight outdoors and our nature and our agricultural industry, I think that is absolutely amazing, and I think the more we get people outside, and especially families and kids, and it sounds like this type of venue would do that, and I think today we're only talking specifically about the Ag Reserve, but for clarification, is this turning it into a commercial space?
Well, it definitely would be for profit. We do have an assembly nonprofit use, so it would be for profit, and it wouldn't have commercially sized vehicles. I mean, unless the applicant is going to do nonprofit, but I don't know, maybe he is. But it's certainly not going to necessarily have commercial sized vehicles, but it would have the commercial volume of vehicles if it has larger events with, you know, multiple parking spaces and things. We would have to see the more of the actual size of the venue that he's proposing, the frequency of guests. You know, we haven't had any of that, but we're looking forward to seeing that if it's initiated.
And I guess that brings me back to Commissioner Sacks. So as she said, this really seems off the beaten path and wouldn't seem to interfere with too many other people. When I saw the site plan, am I understanding that incorrectly?
It's on the end of Half Mile Road, which is a county public right-of-way. It doesn't quite dead end, but actually, I have a slide. Hey, Valerie, can you hit next? Next. Keep going till you see, keep going. Oh, you lost it. Okay. There it is right there. And that's in the yellow is the proposed potential that was proposed at one time, a connector road by engineering, but it didn't move forward. The site is in red, and then that connecting half mile at one time was proposed and might come back to link over to Lyons in that L shape. But that's where the site is. It does have larger lots to the north and to the east, but to the south and to the west, there are residential properties.
I think most of the time people fear noise, right? Being that close to a venue. So, but would they be, they wouldn't, this doesn't give them special permission to go past 10 p.m. It doesn't give them special permission for loud noises beyond what our current noise ordinance is?
This, as written, correct.
They would have to comply by what's already in place? All right, thank you. I would love to initiate. And I think I already seconded, so.
Thank you. Commissioner Woodward, you recognize.
Yes, thank you. When this was first presented to me, I really liked it. I like the idea of giving people access to these areas. Even just going to Bednar's Farms where they have the U-Pick areas, going on a weekend, people bring their children, families go to this. That is a commercial venture, so these things can be done. For something like this, it seems the goal is not a loud party scene, but much more nature, botanical gardens, being outside. So with those things in mind, I mean, as we're moving forward, if we write it in the way of encouraging that and sharpen the pencils, so, you know, we cover bases, that it doesn't become a party scene, but, you know, what is needed. And I know for myself, I know for a lot of people that I talk to, they're craving these areas, and having green space and having botanical gardens. I mean, I love Mounts Botanical, but it's pretty far away from me. So having something like this a lot closer would be a benefit to our community. And I think we have the opportunity now to kind of get it right. And we've seen a lot of what can be done incorrectly and have a lot of unhappy neighbors. So taking that into consideration as we move forward, I like this a lot, and I do, you know, I'd like to encourage it. But again, keeping the neighbors in mind, because I would not want to live next to a new party place when you don't live next to that now. So with that, thank you. I like it.
All right. I'm glad you have that picture up. I have I will support the initiation, but I have deep reservations about this. I see the proximity to residential areas. What's being proposed is an event facility, which would be indoors, and the potential to have disturbances to the people who live around there. And the idea of somehow, I mean, the connection of trying to make a connection on paper only, that doesn't sit well with me. if there's going to be a real connection to something else, but there isn't because it's an event space. And I mean, I just want to be very clear, and I want to make sure the neighbors are notified because just the distances, but there's nothing out there, so sound is going to travel. They're going to have cars coming down those roads. And I want to make sure that if we move forward with this, that the neighbors, their concerns are taken into, I know if I lived there, I'd have concerns about that. I would not want my peace disturbed. I would not want my nights. We already have other instances we've seen around this county. I've seen it in my own district from vacation rentals. We're having large outdoor events and in rural enclaves, and the neighbors, there was virtually nothing they can do. By the time they get somebody out there, when they call code or they call PBSO, their night is already ruined. So I think there's ways to make this something like this work, but I don't think it's there yet. But I will allow the initiation so you all can work on it. But I have deep concerns. All right. Anybody else? Not seeing anybody. We have a card on this item, but I don't see Mr. Martin here. So there's nobody else here. So we'll go ahead and call the question. All right. All those in favor? Yeah. All those opposed? That motion carries 6-0 with Commissioner Bernard off the dais. Okay, we're almost at the end of our agenda. We've got our last item, so now we just need to move through to comments. County Attorney.
No comments.
You did a great job today. Thank you. Zoning Director.
No, just thank you for a long day. I didn't say that sarcastically. It came across. Thank you for bearing with staff because I know we had a very hefty agenda. But thank you.
Thank you. Planning Director.
He's not here.
Oh, well, we let him go. I know he had a graduation to get to. Executive Director.
Just thank you to our staff for preparing once again remarkably. Thank you.
Good. Assistant County Administrator.
Just want to pass along while we're on the thanks train. We try and over-prepare when we're anticipating big crowds, and fortunately, board doesn't have to see a lot of what we do. We're working into last night with, and I want to call out facilities and Isme and her crew, public affairs, Lisa D and her crew, and I was in communication with the sheriff's office last night as well. So turned out we didn't have a big crowd, but we were more than prepared, zoning staff, others. So thank you so much to them for so many of these being ready. And we've done this a number of times, but don't say thank you to them often enough for folks you'll never see who do a lot of that work.
All right. Commissioner Marino, District 1, any comments?
Thank you. I'm ready for dinner.
Okay. District 3, Commissioner Barnett.
I just want to wish everyone a very happy Memorial Day weekend.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner 4. Commissioner 4. District 4, Commissioner Woodward.
It's okay. I don't know my name right now either. Thank you very much and for mentioning Memorial Day. I will be at the Veterans Park Monday morning for Memorial Day, the celebration there. I'd also like to say go Panthers and go Heat. Panthers made it to the final. Heat could do it tonight up in Boston. And everyone, please drive careful who's still here. I just saw we have severe weather out there. So.
Oh, thank you. All right. We go past District 5. District 6, we go to Commissioner Baxter.
Thank you, Mayor. I also wanted to, she stole my thunder a little bit, so go Panthers.
Stole your thunder. Yeah. Is that a pun?
That was not intended, but thank you for that. And so, yes, we're excited. I think the first time since 1996 it's happened, so it's so exciting. And just thank you to staff for putting everything together and everything you've done recently and just helping facilitate things and following up on the earlier direction. We've been looking at employee housing. Farmers usually use, I believe it's SB, I always forget the acronyms, but one of the problems they came across, and the farmers out in the Glades region, so this specifically to the Glades region, not anywhere else in the county, want to look at rundown apartment buildings and rehabbing them to make them employee housing. And so I wanted to, without objection, you know, allow for that within our code.
I don't see any objection, so be it.
Okay, and so to clarify, so what, we allow workforce housing, but the ratio for farm workers, but there's a ratio from the farm to the workers, and it's kind of complicated. So we would build and expand upon our existing farm worker housing language to allow an opportunity for rehab for offsite housing, and I think that
Perfect.
would work.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
very good. Okay, Vice Mayor, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. And that is a very good point about farm worker housing, because they're always asking for it. And I know that equestrians, they have their grooms living on the premises for horses, and we have a lot of equestrian centers, but the farmers are always asking to have their employees live there, and that is a good thing. So I look forward to discussing that in the future. We covered a lot of ground today. And it's interesting because at this hour, with the thunder outside, you usually tell you exactly what's first in your heart. And I look forward to Memorial Day, as I have every year at Veterans Park. And I just say that we lost an icon yesterday with Tina Turner. She was just such a heroine for me growing up as a girl, seeing how she went through so much. She was probably the first celebrity to talk about domestic abuse, and in her 40s, she did it on her own. And I just got to say that after her divorce, the one thing she wanted, only one thing she asked for, was her name back, Tina Turner. And she is just not just a great rock and roll singer, a diva, but a great mentor for many girls and women today. So we lost a great one. And anyways, I'm looking forward to Commissioner Marino producing dinner here for us, 'cause she's so hungry.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I want to just echo the comments of my colleagues to staff. You all, it was a packed agenda today. The efforts that went into it, I want to make sure it doesn't go unnoticed. And all the support staff that are here, to the clerk's office, to our sheriff's deputies, make sure that we are safe, and just really appreciate everybody. I know, as we come into Memorial Day, the remembrance of those who have made the ultimate sacrifice on behalf of this country, given their lives to their families, let them know that they're always in our hearts and our prayers, and how much we appreciate the gift they have given us. And I wish everybody a safe and happy Memorial Day as we gather together. I know in a lot of times, there's a celebratory side of the day, but it's really about the reflection on this great country and those that have made this all possible for us. So with that, I don't see anything else, and this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
I won't see you guys at the